It is Tuesday, June 3rd. Thank you so much for joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Matthew Alvarez. It is 11 a.m. Looking forward to the press briefing from the press briefing room at the White House. That's coming up in just a couple hours from now, but a lot of news to get to, a lot of interviews to get to over the next couple hours as we, of course, monitor any live news that occurs, especially during our live broadcast. But then even outside of that, when we're on Truth Social or X or Facebook or really anywhere, our website, our app, always monitoring various news, including just yesterday. Karoline Leavitt actually stepped up to the microphones outside the White House. We'll be playing that video in its entirety. That video alone on one of the platforms had more than 100,000 views, as people just are hungry for the raw video of start to finish. And if you see color bars pop up, or if you see the camera move around and shake a little bit, it's because they're getting adjusted to their positions. But really, we want to cover as much as we can here at the network. So of course, that's what we're doing. So we'll play that for you, but just a bit later. At about 11:15, we will also be joined by a number of other great people here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Actually, at 11:30, Carla Sands will join us from America First Policy Institute. And then Chris Shumilensky from Immigrant Accountability Project will join us as well to talk about the Boulder, Colorado situation, but in general about ICE and the great work that they're doing, and just hear some more perspective from Chris. That'll be at 12:15. So 11:30, Carla Sands. 12:15, we'll have Chris Shumilensky. And then at 12:30 today, in his first media interview, he is talking to us. It's Nick Hague. He's the Colonel of the United States Space Force. He's the commander from that Falcon 9, that whole rescue mission that happened months back. You remember, it's about 77 days ago to be exact, on March 18th, when two of our astronauts were stuck in space. And thanks to President Trump, Elon Musk, NASA, the Space Force, and on, we were able to rescue those astronauts. Well, he is the first Space Force Guardian to be launched into space. So we have that exclusive interview as he starts his media tour and traveling the country. Again, 3 months back here on Earth after spending several months up there, but also, of course, rescuing the NASA astronauts. So we have that exclusive interview, and we'll relive some of the sights and sounds from that day when that beautiful capsule made splashdown in the Gulf of America. So that's a bit later, about 12:30. But really, at the end of the day, what we're looking for, as well as the 1 o'clock press briefing, of course, is our live stream today. So we'll be going to Karoline Leavitt in just a bit from now. The next couple hours, I believe, may fly by pretty quickly, because when we're talking about America First and conservative media and what President Trump's doing, and the big, beautiful bill and the reasons why it needs to pass and all of that, plus our live interviews, I think our next 2 hours are going to be quite fun, especially when we hear from Colonel Nick Hague of the United States Space Force, the commander of that Falcon 9 mission, which was quite awesome. So we'll relive that in just a bit. Also, some other information that we're following here is the fact that the future schedule for the president outside of today's White House press briefing, Karoline Leavitt said yesterday that the president will participate in a roundtable with law enforcement this week. That's not on the schedule today, so it most likely will be tomorrow or Friday for the law enforcement roundtable, because on Thursday, the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, will travel to Washington to meet with President Trump. So that's on Thursday. So we'll be following all of these different developments here at the network. Also, RSBN host Robert McNeely will be back in the studio a bit later today, so it'll be great to see him and carry some of our live coverage as we continue to bring you wall-to-wall coverage of various events, including, again, in just a couple hours from now, the press briefing with Karoline Leavitt. Future schedule, of course, June 14th, the Army 250th Grand Parade celebration, which is going to be awesome. You can watch it right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. So that's June 14th, more than 6,000 soldiers, and also 150 vehicles and 50 helicopters to follow that route from Arlington, Virginia to the National Mall, starting at the Pentagon. Fireworks will follow. And there's a lot of new pictures and graphics out there of the United States Army as well, celebrating this 250th celebration that's going to happen. Again, $17.75 to $20.25 and beyond, of course, as well. Let's go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. In the meantime, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. So you've got ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue, and a bunch of essential medications. You're talking more than 200 available, including antibiotics. You can order in bulk. You can order some of the health kits. You can order 1 or 2 of the prescription drugs. The thing that's great is there are doctors throughout the country with All Family Pharmacy. They'll hook you up with the right person. And then on top of that, they have a number of pharmacists that will fill the orders for you. You can bypass all of the headache of the doctor's office, and some doctors that won't even fill out a prescription for ivermectin. So this is a good place to do everything when it comes to getting those kind of prescriptions. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Also, Colonial Metals Group, freegoldguide.com/RSBN. When it comes to gold and silver as a backup plan to the dollar, it's a tax-sheltered IRA, 401k, all 100% tax-free. So as the BRICS nations try and use their own currencies and not use our dollar and all that, we have an option, a strong option of gold and silver as well. So freegoldguide.com/RSBN. All right, so it's 11:06 Tuesday, June 3rd here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. So continuing on with the schedule for the president, June 15th through the 17th, he'll be at the G7 in Canada. So we'll see specifically which day that'll be for the president when he speaks or when he's there. We'll have that for you here on the network. Also, just a quick fun shout out once again. We have 20 more states to give shout outs to. So we've been doing 5 days, 5 live broadcasts, each day 10 state shout out, obviously adding up to 50. So this is day 4. So this is the 30th to the 40th amount of states. This is all alphabetical order. Just want to give a shout out to those of you watching all across our country, including New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and South Carolina. Thank you guys so much for watching from those states. And if you haven't heard your state yet, well, the past few broadcasts, we've been doing a lot of the states, of course, 10 at a time, and we'll do 10 more tomorrow just to wrap it up. Just a shout out to all the states of this great union, as we are happy to see a leader that cares about the states, cares about everyone really, as we the people are concerned, because that's his job too, right? He's the representative of all of us. And I'm glad that the majority of the nation said, you know what, we want that guy in the White House again, even though he won in 2020 as well, but that's beside the point. All right, so 11:08, Tuesday, June 3rd. Why don't we do this? Let's go to the press stakeout location from the White House from just yesterday, where Karoline Leavitt stopped by, spoke to the reporters for a few minutes. Let's listen in on that.
Hello. Good to see all of you. Good to see you. There's a lot of press out here, so it would be rude of me not to stop and take a few questions. I just want to say happy Monday. The weather is beautiful. We have another very busy week here at the White House, as you know. The Chancellor of Germany will be here later this week on Thursday for a visit with the President. The President will also be holding a roundtable with law enforcement later this week as well. Today he is packed with meetings and calls on all of the challenges our country faces, but there's a lot of good news on the economic front as well. You see the inflation report. Inflation is down. We saw a report this morning showing that incomes are up. Consumer confidence in May jumped to the highest it has had in a month jump in 4 years. So there's a lot of good news. There's a lot of work to do, and the president's hard at it. So why don't I take a few questions?
What can you say to the Jewish community today to ensure that the White House is doing everything they can to keep them safe after the horrific attack in Boulder, and also the 2 Israeli embassy staff who were targeted just last week here in our nation's capital?
Yeah, we have seen 2 horrific cases of anti-Semitic violence in our country in the last 2 weeks, and it is unacceptable to this president and this White House. And rest assured to all Jewish Americans across our great country, this president has your back, and he's not going to allow anyone to take part in violent terrorism it's acts of terrorism in our country. And that's what this case in Boulder, Colorado is being investigated as. Kudos to our FBI director, Kash Patel, for immediately calling this a targeted terrorist attack. That's clearly what it was. But I'd also like to point out that this administration has done more than any administration to curb this violence and to curb illegal immigration. We secured our border in record time, but we're also tightening up our visa process and our legal immigration process. And we know that this individual, this terrorist, was allowed into this country by the previous administration, was foolishly given a tourism visa, and then was illegally allowed to stay. These individuals are going to be deported, and we're not going to tolerate such violence in our country.
Karoline, last week you told me that Donald Trump was waiting until the talks between Russia and Ukraine today in order to make a judgment on whether or not Vladimir Putin wanted peace. Mm-hmm. Those talks have happened. Where does he stand, and is he willing to impose additional sanctions?
I'll let the president speak on that himself.
Today, the Russian and Ukrainian delegations met in Istanbul, but the Turkish president is suggesting that it's high time that leaders, President Erdogan, President Trump, President Putin, and President Zelensky meet in Istanbul. Is that something that President Trump would support and would be partaking?
Well, the president has said he's open to it if it comes to that, but he wants both of these leaders and both sides to sit down at the table together. And we saw them do that at the urging of President Trump today. But as for how the president feels about those talks and what took place there, I'll let him speak on that.
What's the president's reaction to that Ukrainian drone attack, stunning drone attack on Russian air bases? I'm sure he saw that. What's his reaction?
Well, look, the reaction is this war needs to come to an end. And this war has been brutal from both sides. Too many people have died. And the president wants this war to end at the negotiating table. And he's made that very clear to both leaders, both publicly and privately.
Are the trade negotiations still ongoing after last week's pause? And how are the negotiations with the European Union to avoid that 50% tariff?
Well, the European Union came to the table thanks to President Trump's threat of tariffs. And now we are seeing that they are negotiating in good faith with our delegation. So we remain hopeful and optimistic that a deal can be struck with the European Union. As you know, we are in discussions with many other countries around the world as well who understand the need to cut a good deal with this president and the administration. And Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Ambassador Greer continue to work around the clock on this.
These attacks are concerned. You saw the firebombing of the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, as well as what happened over at the museum here in Washington, and now this most recent attack. Is there concern in the administration that there could possibly be some sleeper cells here in the United States? What type of pattern is the administration looking at as far as terrorist cells?
Well, there's certainly a concern that the previous administration allowed way too many terrorists and illegal immigrants into the interior of our country. And that's why the Department of Homeland Security is working overtime to arrest, detain, and deport as many illegal criminals and terrorists that we can in the United States of America. And any act of violence will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
President Trump has talked about wanting to meet with President Xi for a long time. Kevin Hassett over the weekend previewed a possible conversation between the two of them, including possibly this week. Has that call been scheduled, and what is the president hoping to get out of that call with President Xi?
Well, sure. She asked about the potential call with President Xi. I can confirm that the two leaders will likely talk this week. And as always, when there are foreign leader calls, we will provide a readout of those calls. So we'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you, Karoline.
More historic truth and transparency with this White House. You know, it's a Monday in June, and then Karoline Leavitt still doing the job as press secretary, speaking to the press, even though it wasn't a press briefing like later today is here live. It's always an opportunity, whether it's Karoline Leavitt, whether it's Stephen Miller, Tom Homan, of course, President Trump, and others, always ready to share what's going on and what the plan is. And it's great because we had the insight on the plan, those 20 core promises that we talk about here at the network, to the American people, starting out with sealing the border being number 1, number 7 being defend the Constitution. I mean, there's so many great things on that 20 core promises plan to the American people, the promises. So we're really watching the reform of our country each day, and we're looking forward to bringing you live Karoline Leavitt at 1 o'clock. Also, if you're just joining us now, we'll go over some of the programming notes in a minute. Before we do, angelpace.com. If you use the RSBN promo code, you've got a percentage off not only the Miracle Cream right there, but other products that you'll see on angelpaste.com out of Spring, Texas. They hire military veterans, a great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Same goes with Tax Network USA. Tax Network USA, 800-357-1415 is the phone number. So it's tnusa.com/RSBN. If you just want to check them out, just tnusa.com/RSBN, especially if you have any of those back taxes and you want to settle that or at least get the ball rolling. This is a great group to do it with. Tax Network USA, 800-357-1415. Two great sponsors here on RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks again for streaming in. Again, a bit later today, Robert McNeely will be back in studio and we'll be covering some events, and we'll continue on with the week. We have a lot of coverage coming up, including hearing from Karoline Leavitt, just yesterday in that press gaggle or that quick mini press conference that the president will partake in a law enforcement roundtable. So once that's announced, we'll cover that as well. And then on Thursday, the German new chancellor, Friedrich Merz, will travel to Washington. So another foreign trip from someone out there in the world here to the United States. And speaking of the world and Europe and that kind of thing, a great victory in Poland for the conservative leader there, supporter of President Trump as well. They took a photo, of course, thumbs up at the Oval Office not too long ago, and a great leader, a great victory for the free world in Poland. We already see that happening in Hungary with Viktor Orban. We see that in El Salvador with Nayib Bukele. We see these wins happening around the world, and these are all people that are saying, you know what? Yeah, President Trump's the leader of the free world. Yeah, President Trump's this, that, and that, and how great he is. But these leaders aren't really in a competition with him. They want to join this whole thing called the freedom movement. And it's great to have the best one here in our country, President Donald Trump. So at the end of the day, glad to see that victory in Poland. All right, so back to what I was saying, though. On Thursday, the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, will be in Washington. Of course, you can count on us for that live coverage when that happens. Again, let's go back over a couple other things. Again, June 14th, Flag Day, the Army's 250th celebration there. You can see some of the graphics starting to come out from the U.S. Army. There will be fireworks toward the end of the parade. It's going to be a huge, huge parade there. And they actually have another photo as well from 1775, and they even put their logo on there. I mean, before there was a nation, there was an army. That's what the U.S. Army posted yesterday. Isn't that the truth? There's George Washington, of course, going across the Potomac, and the 250th celebration of our United States Army coming up June 14th, Flag Day, President Trump's birthday, and it'll be all live right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It will be a Saturday, June 14th. And I did look at some of the schedule. It looks like the parade and some of the things will be happening towards the evening hours as well, with the fireworks to follow. So it'll be just a great day of patriotism. And yes, it's a secure event. There's checkpoints to go in through security, so it's not just a free-for-all. So this is going to be a great event there in Washington, D.C. Also coming up a little bit later, speaking of the military, the United States Space Force, Colonel Nick Hague, he was the commander on that Falcon 9 that splashed down some 77 days ago. He's the first U.S. Space Force Guardian to ever launch into space. He's an astronaut. He is former U.S. Air Force and now a colonel at the Space Force. Well, we received the first media interview with the commander right here on Right Side. You'll see that interview in about an hour or so, as we have a couple of other live interviews that will be joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. So looking forward to airing that interview and reliving some of those moments. You remember the splashdown where it was Butch and Sonny, the two astronauts that were able to be rescued, of course, thanks to President Trump and Elon Musk with SpaceX. And then, of course, the United States Space Force involved, and, of course, NASA as well. And we had to credit NASA. We were allowed to air that video here on Right Side. So we're going to look at a couple of those clips in just a bit as we stand by and get ready for this press conference from Karoline Leavitt, which will be, again, at 1 o'clock today, Eastern Time. In the meantime, we know, of course, that the president will participate in that roundtable with law enforcement coming up. Also, we're looking at the America First Policy Institute. Carla Sands will join us to talk about a number of current events. And then Chris Shmolensky of Immigration Accountability Project will also be joining us, people that are based on the right side of history and people that are looking out for the American people. And, it really all starts out with yourself, though, first, right? You say, okay, what decisions can I make here that'll be great for our country? You have God in your life, you have the desire for conservatism, for common sense, for the America First way. And then once you have that going on, you have your opportunity, whatever industry it is. If you don't work in anything politics or conservative media or whatever it is, those friends at work that are on the right side of history. And sometimes, some people are afraid to talk about certain political issues. Some are not. But we know that the majority of the nation is agreeing with you. The majority of the entire country is on your side. And that is refreshing. And it's wonderful to see. And it's great that you choose Right Side Broadcasting Network and conservative media as a whole as a solution to the left lamestream, as the great Rush Limbaugh used to call them, the left-wing media who would always propagate lies to you. Here, this is common sense information. It's, hey, there's a press conference with Karoline Leavitt coming up. We love our country. We love God. We love the Bible. We love the Constitution. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of where we're coming from, is a very basic way of reporting and not trying to confuse anybody, but just being straight up with you guys, because that is what it's all about. Because we saw that with President Trump as when he was on those campaign trails as the candidate, he just told it like it was, or told it like it is. And I will say one thing about the whole tell it like it is. I'll just put it this way. I was watching some mainstream or some news yesterday. I won't say specifically what network, but the promos that they had, all they kept saying was, this XYZ host is going to tell it like it is, coming up later tonight. And they had that promo several times saying the exact words that we've been speaking here for the past at least how many months? At least for the past 2 weeks. I know I've said the words tell it like it is a lot, because that's what we want to do here. But interesting that some of the other media outlets out there are using that phrase as well. Now, we didn't invent the phrase. We don't have a copyright of the phrase or anything like that. But that really is what we are looking to do. Outside of what the mainstream media is saying, outside of what everybody else is saying, we simply do want to tell it like it is. For example, I love the fact that we have a southern border that is closed because of President Trump. I love the fact that we have ICE that are cleaning out the criminal illegal aliens from our country. I love the fact that we have 20 core promises from President Trump that are all about America first and saving our country. So we can go on with that list in a little bit later, but it's great to be a part of it. And thank you so much for watching here. And also, if you get a chance to order any of the products like this one, mypillow.com/RSBN, you can always check it out when it comes to the beach sale. There's a lot of great products there. 50% off right there on your screen. 50% off all sorts of products from the beach sale. If you're going to maybe the Gulf of America or the Atlantic or the Pacific or a lake or the rivers, that kind of thing, you want to have some gear there for you. So mypillow.com/RSBN. Also, if you'd like to donate to Right Side, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801. So text RSBN to 801-801. That money goes toward all sorts of things here at the network as we continue to expand and grow and cover all sorts of news here. And again, common sense stuff. Nothing that is reinventing the wheel, not rocket science. Back to the basics of, hey, here's what's going on out there. This is what we see. And the thing that's interesting is the reason why loyal viewers are with Right Side Broadcasting Network is because that was the grassroots move that our owner and founder and the family, the Seals family, did back in 2015. Is it was all about, hey, you know what? President Trump's speaking there, and they're only showing, the mainstream media was only showing the few people behind the president. It was that close-up shot. And they wouldn't show the entire crowd. And then you saw President Trump being like, hey, turn the cameras around. Look at all the people here. And that's what Right Side started to do. We covered the full speech. We didn't dip in and dip out of coverage. We didn't go like this. Say they're talking about some story. Maybe it was about a crime that happened in California or some state. And this is how it probably looked, right? They'd be like, okay, well, that report coming to you from Los Angeles moments ago. Meantime, President Trump, or actually the candidate Trump, is speaking at a rally right now in Michigan. Let's go there. And then they'd sit there for maybe 5 minutes, listen to President Trump. You'd hear the crowd, but you wouldn't see the crowd. And then after that 5 minutes, good old mainstream media, don't they love to show the truth? Instead of staying with the president or staying with the candidate who was the top candidate at the time, both in the first go around, the second go around, and even this third go around. Then after that 5 minutes of President Trump speaking, candidate Trump, the camera would come back to the anchor or the correspondent. Oh, welcome back. Okay, so let's move on to other news. No, there's no other news. When it comes to someone that is wanting to save our nation and someone that is standing up for we the people, that is the news. You can't cherry pick when it comes to the news. You have to say, okay, here's what's really happening out there, but also coming from a perspective that is all about common sense. Again, it's all about that right side of history aspect. We know what truth is versus a lie. We know what good versus evil is. Is anybody perfect? No, but we do know we want our country to be saved and our country to be made great again. So I just kind of love sometimes just saying things against the mainstream media. I used to work in it, and you know, there are still colleagues that I know or respect and all that. It's all great, but it's not that we agree on the same things when it comes to what we talk about. And it is terrible that they still continue. After what President Trump went through for us, we the people, over the past 4 years, you know, we saw what happened in Butler. We saw what happened with lawfare. We saw what happened with all these unjust things, not only to President Trump, but anybody that would follow him or speak about him. And I was thinking about freedom of speech the other day, and I just want to make sure that in the future, after President Trump, hopefully we have another America First candidate right in there, and I can name a bunch, and I know you can too, that we'd like to see, including the vice president. But the point is, I don't want to ever have to be concerned about anything if I say, man, I miss President Trump. I wish he was in office. You know, I'm just saying if there's ever a Democrat leader again in this country. Because the way the Democrat Party is right now is awful, as you guys know. They've gone way, way left. Anyway, I just, you know, I want to do what I can to stay on the right side of history in the sense of the narrative that is being talked about. Again, the left side of the aisle, one more thing about it, with the mainstream media, Stephen Miller was on the other day, and he was making these great points about our country and about immigration and about the southern border and the big, beautiful bill and on and on and on. And instead, it seems like the networks like to play TV. They like to, oh, thanks for that. Oh, we got that great interview. Next. And all they did was, they said, thank you, Stephen, and moved on. After Stephen put his heart and his mind out there for the American people, and it was really unfortunate to see that the host just like kind of brushed it off, like, next. Enough of the next, enough of the, as I called it, and some called it in local news back in the day, Mick news, where it's quick. Okay, President Trump said this, bye. No, we got to slow this roll down a bit and say, okay, really what's happening here? Not this coming up tonight on the news is this story and this story, but we're not going to really cover the full angle of what the heck's going on out there. And the reason why I'm talking like this now is because I want us to be, obviously we're on the same side here, most of us, right? But to learn that in the conservative media world that we're in now, that we're starting to understand that trust relationship that's being built. This is not something that we're just doing just for our health only. This is literally some of the things that we see out there in the country. We saw what it was like over the past 4 years. Yesterday, I was looking at X a little bit, and I was paging through, and I was going to President Trump's older posts. And I saw one about 2024 when it comes to one of the videos of what it was like under the last 4 years. And I thought, man, we're this close to going off the deep end of this country. And for me, I know you haven't forgotten it, but I'm not forgetting it. I really just want to see, who doesn't want to be free, guys? Who doesn't want our country to be made great again? And we have to have justice be served in this nation outside of all of the great wins that we have under President Trump. There's a monologue without a teleprompter. I don't know if it was that brilliant or not, but hey, I'm just speaking from the heart, and I think that's what you like. I like it. I like when Robert McNeely does it. I like when Christina Loren does the same thing, just speaks from the heart. I like when President Trump speaks from the heart. It's a little bit more interesting anyway sometimes than reading from a prompter. But anyway. All right, so it is 11:30, bottom of the hour, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Coming up next is America First Policy Institute. Carla Sands will join us. Looking forward to seeing her join us here on Right Side. And then also at 12:15, we will go to someone with Immigration Accountability Project, Chris Shimolensky. He'll join us. And then a bit later at 12:30, we'll hear from the United States Space Force, the commander of the Falcon 9, the astronaut Colonel Nick Hague, in his first media interview after rescuing 2 astronauts some 77 days ago. Before we continue our coverage, I'm Matthew Alvarez. Let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
You've heard how hard it can be to get access to medications like ivermectin, all the things they don't want you to take because they're actually effective and they don't cost all that much, right? You've seen that one before. So it's critical to have something like that on hand for any emergency and to be prepared in a time of crisis. And that's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're cutting through the nonsense and they make it easy to get hard to find medications when you need them most. They'll provide the prescription, no hoops to jump through, no waiting room, no hassle, and they deliver it right to your door. All Family Pharma even lets you order in bulk so you can stay ahead of the curve. Head over to allfamilypharmacy.com for 10% off your first order. Again, allfamilypharmacy.com. It's simple. Get the 10% savings. Be prepared.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Welcome back. It's RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. It's 11:34 in the morning on this Tuesday, June 3rd. Getting ready for that press briefing coming up in just a bit at the White House. Looking forward to that. I've read a comment on Truth Social yesterday that they always look forward to the Karoline Leavitt press briefings because she's always fire. She always is good. She's always on point, and it's true. And so we look forward to seeing that coming up in just a bit from now. Meantime, President Trump on Truth Social saying just about 10 hours ago, and we're going to read some of the new ones too, but he said a biological male competed in California girls' state finals, winning big, despite the fact that they were warned by me not to do so, as Governor Gavin Newsom fully understands large-scale fines will be imposed. President Trump 10 hours ago as well, saying because of tariffs, our economy is booming, in all caps. 2 hours ago, President Trump said Rand Paul has very little understanding of the BBB, the Big Beautiful Bill, especially the tremendous growth that is coming. He loves voting no on everything. He thinks it's good politics, but it's not. The BBB is a big winner, the Big Beautiful Bill, a big winner, of course, as we look forward to seeing the Senate get everything together with that and hopefully pass that to get to President Trump. That 13% of a tax increase for those of us that make anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000. On top of that, a lot to do with the southern border as well, and immigration and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's so many reasons why the Big Beautiful Bill is something that is looking good. And, you know, the people that are against it, I was watching some of AOC's posts yesterday, and, you know, it was ridiculous to hear the things that she talks about. Same thing with Bernie Sanders, same things with Cory Booker and all those guys. I don't know where they all went wrong back in the day. I wish maybe they weren't brainwashed and didn't have the woke mind virus and would be on the right side of history. We can use skills in all sorts of industries out there, but unfortunately right now they're not on the right side of history. Also, President Trump speaking more about Rand Paul. He says Rand votes no on everything, but never has any practical or constructive ideas. His ideas are actually crazy. And then he put in parentheses, losers. The people of Kentucky can't stand him. This is a big growth bill, President Trump says. So that from the president a couple hours ago, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Also, the White House posting a photo of the president meeting with Bryson DeChambeau, the golfer there who was golfing in the south lawn of the White House yesterday. I saw that video from Margot Martin. A lot of you guys on either Truth or X were posting about it too. Kind of cool to see, you know, the greens in the back of the White House, and beautiful shots there by Bryson. Also, it's 11:37 a.m. Next up will be Carla Sands from America First Policy Institute. As soon as she joins, we'll go to her live. And then again at 12:15, we're going to have someone with the Immigration Accountability Project just talk to us about all of the ICE mass deportations that are happening out there. You know, public opinion realizing, okay, well, we saw the crimes, we've heard about these crimes, we're seeing the crimes. And then we see what happened in Boulder, Colorado with an illegal immigrant from Egypt the other day. So a lot to be said there from Chris Shumlinsky. Also, it was earlier this year, exactly 77 days ago, thanks to President Trump and Elon Musk, that 2 American astronauts were rescued from space, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. The astronaut and U.S. Space Force colonel, he was the commander on this trip, Nick Hague, he led that mission. And he's the first U.S. Space Force Guardian to ever go to space. So his first media interview is with yours truly, Right Side Broadcasting Network. Pretty cool stuff. So we're going to have that interview a bit later. We're also going to watch some of the cool moments when that vessel or that capsule splashed down and just what it was like. And, you know, we'll hear from the words that Commander Hague actually spoke when the splashdown happened. We have the audio feed, which was from NASA. We had credit, availability. We were able to air the NASA splashdown and just all of that. So, and he was actually the first person to egress or exit the space capsule back 77 days from now. So we're going to hear what it was like for him in space. What did he feel when he saw the 2 astronauts and made contact and was able to rescue them? What was it like when it was splashed down there in the Gulf of America? And also, I asked him about any insight or any advice for someone like myself or anybody that wants to hear, because if you're former Air Force and you're a current colonel at the United States Space Force and you have 374 days of time spent in space and you were the one chosen to go rescue 2 astronauts, and it's the first ever U.S. Space Force Guardian to ever be able to do something like that, and he did it. I want to know, how the heck did you get to where you are today? So always interesting to hear those kinds of insight from people like that. I've never interviewed an astronaut before. I've spoken to presidents before in my past in the sense of Was able to speak to President Trump on the campaign trail one time, asked him a question. And I've also spoken to George W. Bush and Barack Obama back in the mainstream media days. Only got one question in or comment to one of them. So basically, you know, an astronaut from the U.S. Space Force, that's pretty high up on the list. That's really cool. So, hey, we get to watch it together, and I hope you enjoy it. That'll be a little bit later here on the broadcast. But more importantly, outside of that, of course, the reason why we're doing today's live coverage is to see the 1 p.m. press briefing with Karoline Leavitt at the White House, because what's happening today is obviously the freshest news and what's the schedule coming up for President Trump, as there are so many different news items out there in this 24/7 news cycle. But it's great to know that the 24/7 news cycle doesn't have to be what the left-wing media is calling it to be. Instead, why not just go where the truth is? And that's what I like about conservative media. We go with really the common sense of what's happening out there to everyday Americans like myself, like you. We are part of the We the People movement, the freedom movement, and we simply want our country to be made great again. I don't forget every time President Trump had these great rallies and speeches over the years. I know you don't forget about it either. Of course, Right Side Broadcasting Network, the OG when it comes to rallies since 2015. The point of all of it is, I don't forget what it's like when you stand there on the media riser, just like Robert McNeely and Christina Loren and Megan Kohler and others over the years at Right Side Broadcasting Network have done with the great camera operators that we have. You know, to stand there, especially a week after Butler, Pennsylvania. I remember in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I was supposed to have another colleague with me, but the flight was canceled for that colleague. So I had to do this solo from Grand Rapids, Michigan, inside an arena 7 days after Butler, Pennsylvania, the incident there. And what it was like to see President Trump walk out onto that stage and the roar of the crowd in Michigan. I personally bottle that stuff up and think about how many people across this country absolutely love Make America Great Again and love President Trump. So when we're doing these reports here and we're doing, you know, sometimes it is run of the mill. Yesterday, there wasn't a lot of coverage going on, so we were here with you and shared some videos of President Trump's great speech in Pittsburgh the other day. But when it's even just on a basic June day or July or August or whatever day it is, we still remember what it was like out there in those rally days, of the amount of passion for the United States of America, for the Constitution, for President Trump, and this great team that he's put together. So just a little bit of context into what we're doing here as we move forward. And I don't think MAGA is going to go away ever. I think MAGA is going to be around forever, because who in this country, all of us, right, most of us that are watching, are saying, yeah, let's make America great again, or let's make America great, greater than ever before. And that's part of that freedom movement. So that'll always be. And pretty awesome that we are together in this historic time of this president and in conservative media where we're able to cover things like today. I mean, I never thought, to be honest with you, that I'd get excited about a 1 o'clock press briefing. But I'm pretty pumped, because it's truth that is being directed for our country. And then you have somebody like Karoline Leavitt, who's an absolute rock star, just like Stephen Miller, just like President Trump, J.D. Vance, and all these cabinet leaders. So yeah, it's fun to cover, but it's very informative too, to stay with really what's happening out there. And again, I'll just stop here and just say, we want to tell it, and we do tell it just like it is. That's where I want to stay always based in that, regardless of all the noise out there. I know there's a lot of places we could be watching, you know, news, or there's places we can go online and read different reports and that kind of thing. And I'll be really transparent with you and say, it's all about conservative media. Yes, of course, we want you to choose Right Side Broadcasting Network. I love working here. I love this network. But outside of that, conservative media with all of different, you know, podcasts and influencers and outlets, this is a real on the same side of history thing going on. So we just thank you so much for seeing conservative media as it is right now, growing into something that is the solution to the lies on the left. Just like, and I'll finalize the point here in a second, but just like the corruption that we saw because Doge, you know, unveiled all the corruption, the fraud, waste, and abuse in the government, it's still happening. There's still exploiting and getting rid of corruption in every department, hopefully every specific department, that there would be nobody that is anti-President Trump, anti-freedom, anti-the Constitution, anti-Jesus, anti-God. If you're Jewish or if you're Christian or if you have another faith, I'm not here to preach about that. I'd love to preach about it. I love God. I love Jesus. That saved my life. We all go through our ups and downs. That's my story, but I'm not pushing that on you guys. But outside of all that, what we want to do is just see freedom be part of this nation. And we have an opportunity in conservative media to do exactly what Doge did in a way, because the media was corrupt, right? So we have this opportunity to be the solution to that corrupt media and make media great. I don't say make media great again right now. Has media ever been great? That's the question. Has it? Has the media ever been great? I've actually met, and I'm not lying to you, I've met Walter Cronkite back in the day. He traveled to Robert Morris University, where I went to college, and there was this Heinz speaker series, Heinz Ketchup in Pittsburgh. Walter Cronkite stopped by our school. Benjamin Netanyahu stopped by our school. I was able to, in my career, interview, of all people, Brian Williams of NBC, because I used to work at a local NBC affiliate. I was an intern at ABC, a local affiliate as well, and got to meet the great Peter Jennings. But was there ever great media? I think the answer is no. Yes, it was great that when Walter Cronkite talked about certain issues, the JFK assassination was horrible, and many of you remember that. Or the landing on the moon. These are real epic things. But specifically, though, were all of the people, and I don't know, but I will say, were all of the people on the right side of history, full on, full stop, no questions asked, not compromised, not corrupted, and really loving God, loving our country, loving our freedoms? Were those guys that way? I can't say, because I didn't know them specifically. Yes, I met some of them, but didn't know it specifically. So I'm not going to say make media great again. Let's just make media great. And we can do that in conservative media. A shout out to everybody in conservative media. What else is there to say? All right, so it's 11:47, Tuesday, June 3rd. Let's go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can save upwards of 20% off of more than 200 essential medications. You're talking ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue. Also, if you're looking for some of the basics like penicillin, amoxicillin, more than 200 essential medications, antibiotics. You can order in bulk. You can order just a few prescriptions if you'd like. But all you have to do is go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. RSBN 20 is that code there. Then Colonial Metals Group, freegoldguide.com/RSBN as well. If you're looking to have a tax-free, 100% tax-free, all backed in gold and silver, your money in a 401k or tax-sheltered IRA, you can do that right there on Colonial Metals Group. You'll get that free gold guide in the mail, and it's always great to get something for free. So freegoldguide.com/RSBN gets you that info kit on just the 1, 2, 3s on Colonial Metals Group. All right, so it's 11:48, Tuesday, June 3rd. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Let's take a commercial break as we're looking live there at the press briefing room. About an hour and 12 minutes until that press briefing by the great Karoline Leavitt, who's, again, an absolute rock star for We the People. And we'll have that interview with the colonel from the United States Space Force coming up in a bit as well. So we'll be right back here on RSBN Live.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
You've heard how hard it can be to get access to medications like ivermectin, all the things they don't want you to take because they're actually effective and they don't cost all that much, right? You've seen that one before. So it's critical to have something like that on hand for any emergency and to be prepared in a time of crisis. And that's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're cutting through the nonsense and they make it easy to get hard to find medications when you need them most. They'll provide the prescription, no hoops to jump through, no waiting room, no hassle, and they deliver it right to your door. All Family Pharma even lets you order in bulk so you can stay ahead of the curve. Head over to allfamilypharmacy.com for 10% off your first order. Again, allfamilypharmacy.com. It's simple. Get the 10% savings. Be prepared.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Good morning. Welcome back to RSBN Live. Looking live at the West Wing there, of course, the press briefing room at the White House. So it is 11:52, Tuesday, June 3rd. So we'll be going there live, of course, for the entire press conference with Karoline Leavitt. So any details about specifically maybe the law enforcement roundtable, when that will be, maybe we'll learn more about that. I believe that'll be either tomorrow or on Friday. But we know that on Thursday, the new German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, will visit President Trump at the White House. So definitely a foreign visit coming up on Thursday. And again, we know that there will be a roundtable that President Trump will participate in with law enforcement this week as well. That, according to Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. Now, those of you that are just joining us, we did play a clip of Karoline yesterday speaking to the press outside the White House. I think we can re-rack that one and show that to you because it got a lot of views, actually, just playing that yesterday because people are hungry for what's going on in our country. So we share it with you here as hosts and anchor and correspondents and all that, but we like to hear it directly from We the People, and Karoline Leavitt, of course, part of We the People. So let's go to that video from just yesterday right now.
Karen, I can't see you. Hello. Good to see all of you. Good to see you. There's a lot of press out here, so it would be rude of me not to stop and take a few questions. I just want to say happy Monday. The weather is beautiful. We have another very busy week here at the White House, as you know. The Chancellor of Germany will be here later this week on Thursday for a visit with the President. The President will also be holding a roundtable with law enforcement later this week as well. Today he is packed with meetings and calls on all of the challenges our country faces, but there's a lot of good news on the economic front as well. You see the inflation report. Inflation is down. We saw a report this morning showing that incomes are up. Consumer confidence in May jumped to the highest it has had in a month jump in 4 years. So there's a lot of good news. There's a lot of work to do, and the President's hard at it. So why don't I take a few questions?
What can you say to the Jewish community today to ensure that the White House is doing everything they can to keep them safe after the horrific attack in Boulder, and also the 2 Israeli embassy staff who were targeted just last week here in our nation's capital.
Yeah, we have seen two horrific cases of anti-Semitic violence in our country in the last 2 weeks, and it is unacceptable to this president and this White House. And rest assured, to all Jewish Americans across our great country, this president has your back, and he's not going to allow anyone to take part in violent terrorism. It's acts of terrorism in our country. And that's what this case in Boulder, Colorado is being investigated as. Kudos to our FBI director, Kash Patel, for immediately calling this a targeted terrorist attack. That's clearly what it was. But I'd also like to point out that this administration has done more than any administration to curb this violence and to curb illegal immigration. We secured our border in record time, but we're also tightening up our visa process and our legal immigration process. And we know that this individual, this terrorist, was allowed into this country by the previous administration, was foolishly given a tourism visa, and then was illegally allowed to stay. These individuals are going to be deported, and we're not going to tolerate such violence in our country.
Caroline, last week you told me that Donald Trump was waiting until the talks between Russia and Ukraine today in order to make a judgment on whether or not Vladimir Putin wanted peace. Those talks have happened. Where does he stand, and is he willing to impose additional sanctions?
I'll let the president speak on that himself.
Today, the Russian and Ukrainian delegations met in Istanbul, but the Turkish president is suggesting that it's high time that leaders, President Erdogan, President Trump, President Putin, and President Zelensky meet in Istanbul. Is that something that President Trump would support and would be partaking?
Well, the president has said he's open to it if it comes to that, but he wants both of these leaders and both sides to sit down at the table together. And we saw them do that at the urging of President Trump today. But as for how the president feels about those talks and what took place there, I'll let him speak on that.
What's the president's reaction to that Ukrainian drone attack, stunning drone attack on Russian air bases? I'm sure he saw that. What's his reaction?
Well, look, the reaction is this war needs to come to an end. And this war has been brutal from both sides. Too many people have died. And the president wants this war to end at the negotiating table. And he's made that very clear to both leaders, both publicly and privately.
Are the trade negotiations still ongoing after last week's pause? And how are the negotiations with the European Union to avoid that 50% tariff?
Well, the European Union came to the table thanks to President Trump's threat of tariffs. And now we are seeing that they are negotiating in good faith with our delegation. So we remain hopeful and optimistic that a deal can be struck with the European Union. As you know, we are in discussions with many other countries around the world as well who understand the need to cut a good deal with this president and the administration. And Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Ambassador Greer continue to work around the clock on this.
These hacks are concerned. We saw the firebombing of the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, as well as what happened over at the museum here in Washington, and now this most recent attack. Is there concern in the administration that there could possibly be some sleeper cells here in the United States? What type of pattern is the administration looking at as far as terrorist cells?
Well, there's certainly a concern that the previous administration allowed way too many terrorists and illegal immigrants into the interior of our country. And that's why the Department of Homeland Security is working overtime to arrest, detain, and deport as many illegal criminals and terrorists that we can in the United States of America. And any act of violence will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
President Trump has talked about wanting to meet with President Xi for a long time. Kevin Hassett over the weekend previewed a possible conversation between the two of them, including possibly this week. Has that call been scheduled, and what is the president hoping to get out of that call with President Xi?
Well, sure. She asked about the potential call with President Xi. I can confirm that the two leaders will likely talk this week. And as always, when there are foreign leader calls, we will provide a readout of those calls. So we'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Okay, so that within the 24/7 news cycle there, Karoline Leavitt yesterday at the stakeout spot right outside of the West Wing of the White House. If you saw some of the green tarps or tents there, that's where some of the mainstream media does some of their live vantage points of the White House in the background, and also some great conservative media as well. So yeah, we're looking forward to hearing again from Karoline Leavitt live today on this Tuesday, June 3rd, as we're approaching noon right here at the top of the hour, all brought to you by a number of great sponsors, including angelpaste.com. The Miracle Cream's right there, but if you go to angelpaste.com, whether you want to order that plus a few other products, There's a number of them to choose from out of Spring, Texas. I hire military veterans. They have a great product that you see on the screen, but also, again, check out and peruse maybe some of the other ones too, and then use that RSBN promo code for a discount, angelpaste.com. Also, if you'd like to subscribe to the RSBN newsletter, all you have to do is go to RSB Network/newsletter. As you see there, you can get those America First updates and exclusive offers. Always good to be kind of in the know of what's going on out there. So you can go rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. You could also follow us on X and Truth Social, Getter, Facebook, all over the place, really. Get the app if you like to. And thanks for watching wherever you're watching today, especially those of you watching on Rumble. Of course, we're getting closer to 750,000 slowly there, but it's happening maybe a little faster than we think, because it's great to see those numbers go up. And of course, approaching the 2 million mark on YouTube. So great to see you watching wherever you are watching, especially again to the great streaming service Rumble. All right, so there's a live look at the empty press briefing room. So when we say we take things or do things wall to wall here, live coverage, we mean it. All kidding aside, looking forward to seeing a couple more interviews here on Right Side as we continue our coverage right now. And if you're just joining us, we checked out some of President Trump's Truth Social posts recently as well, and really just monitoring any kind of national breaking news, which there is nothing at this point, according to all of the breaking news style of accounts on X. Usually whenever there's something that's big enough breaking news, it'll pop up all over the place and quickly. We also have our team as well that are monitoring what's going on out there. But in the meantime, it is Tuesday, June 3rd, 12:01 on the East Coast. Those of you watching on the West Coast, good morning to you at 9 in the morning. And those in the Mountain Time Zone, and of course, in the great Central Time Zone, thank you guys for watching wherever you're watching from, including in some cases around the world, which is pretty cool to think about when it comes to technology, how we can be live in one spot and people around the world or around the country can see us live. I still am fascinated by how that all works. It's pretty wild, but it's great to have the opportunity to do this. So again, thanks for streaming in live with us. All right, so coming up in just a bit, we have a number of interviews to get to. Let's first talk about the United States Space Force. I believe we do have a picture of the commander, Nick Hague. He's going to speak with us exclusively as the first media outlet to do an interview with. This is post 77 days since he and his team were in that Falcon 9. Do you remember a few months back when the two astronauts were saved from outer space or rescued from outer space? Thanks to President Trump, thanks to Elon Musk. So it's a shout out to NASA, SpaceX, the United States Space Force. He is the first United States Space Force Guardian to ever actually be sent to space. So it's pretty awesome to be able to hear his insight. I mean, he's also, of course, former U.S. Air Force, a NASA astronaut, and also a colonel with the United States Space Force. So we're going to relive some of those moments of the splashdown, what that was like. We're also going to hear insight from Colonel Hague. Looking forward to airing that interview in just a bit from now. We also are going to talk to Chris Shimolensky with Immigration Accountability Project, just to talk to us about what's going on out there when it comes to the southern border and mass deportations with ICE. We know that when we're out there at all the rallies, many of you would tell myself or Robert McNeely or Christina Loren or Megan Kohler or others at the network, hey, this is my most important issue that I want to hear President Trump talk about. And it was 9 times out of 10, immigration or the southern border being closed. And then, of course, the economy. And then outside of those two major points, it's also, the saving of our country instead of falling off the deep end and becoming the most woke, country on planet Earth under the other people that were trying to push that. So we got saved from that. And then one of the most important ones, in my opinion, is defending our constitutional rights, having the Bill of Rights and having our Constitution be the law of this land and holding that and upholding that. And that's what every president, when they swear an oath and they put their hand on the Bible, or if they don't put their hand on the Bible, whatever they do when it comes to speaking a promise, That's part of it, is to protect and preserve the Constitution of the United States. So that's what we like to hear and watch in this at this network, including, again, that game plan that's out there, the 20 core promises to the American people, which is the reformation of America. You know how there's Reform UK with Nigel Farage, who's super based and super all about Trump and about freedom? Well, make England great, but make America great as well, again. So, so that's what we're liking to cover and like to stick with those kind of very basic points. But sometimes it's in the simple things that is where the value is. Less is more in some cases, right? So, yeah, we're not trying to confuse anybody. Anyway, so it's 12:05, Tuesday, June 3rd. Producer, can you repeat that, please? Okay, let's go to that. That's a great post from Representative Ronnie Jackson on Truth Social, saying rogue judges are trying to prevent President Trump from implementing tariffs, deporting illegals, and putting America first. 80 million Americans did not vote for radical judges to handcuff POTUS, the President of the United States. Ronnie Jackson, once again, spitting truth on social media, on Truth Social and on X. The great Ronnie Jackson, of course, the former physician for President Trump and now the representative of Texas. And I think of the Representative Keith Self from Texas and Brandon Gill of Texas and Ted Cruz and others doing great in the Lone Star State. But again, people that tell it like it is, like Ronnie Jackson. Great to read from him here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. All right, so we're just a few minutes away from that live interview coming up here. Again, this all brought to you by a number of great sponsors. Why don't we do a round of sponsors here as we get ready for our live interviews, and also that interview with the United States Space Force Commander and Colonel Nick Hague. Let's go with Tax Network USA. 800-357-1415 is the number there for you. If you have any back taxes that you'd like to settle or at least get the ball rolling, you can give them a call, 800-357-1415, tnusa.com/RSBN. Also, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's great to see you on the commercials here at Right Side the great Don Jr. talking about All Family Pharmacy as well. And we've been interviewing a lot of people from the company, Michael Kunzler, the co-owner, and some of the pharmacists as well. Just a great group of people that are also saying, hey, if you need ivermectin or want ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or methylene blue or even amoxicillin or penicillin or other essential medications, there's more than 200 available on allfamilypharmacy.com. You can get a kit, you can order in bulk, you can order a couple medications, and then use that RSBN 20 promo code. It gives you that 20% off of more than 200 essential medications. So allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, a great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's double check a few things on X and on Truth Social as we get ready for this press briefing. That'll be a bit later. We're talking in the next 45 minutes or so, but within the next 45 minutes, we're gonna have a lot of good content. So hopefully you stick around. And of course, I'm sure you will, to watch the great press briefing by Karoline Leavitt, probably the GOAT of press briefing, press secretaries. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was great as well. And there are maybe a few others out there, but Karoline Leavitt, right out of the gate, being like, okay, this is what I'm doing. All right, rock and roll. Let's get it done for the American people. Because if you remember watching Karoline on various outlets, including Right Side Broadcasting Networks, to always on point and always well-spoken. And that, obviously, we have different gifts, right? All of us have different natural gifts out there. Whatever industry you work in, say if it's if you're an architect, or say if you're in law enforcement, or if you work at a factory, or whatever you do, your skill set is what you're about, right? Your natural skill to be able to do that. And it's great to be able to have people in the right positions like Karoline Leavitt, who is a superstar with what she does there. And then people like, of course, President Trump, the natural born leader himself. So finding that natural gift, whatever it is the key to success, in my opinion. And that takes a little bit to find sometimes. But once you find it, keep it on. All right, so let's see here. On X, not seeing anything for national breaking news at all, but we can go over a couple of President Trump's Truth Social posts just recently from earlier today. He was saying that Rand Paul has very little understanding of the big, beautiful bill, especially the tremendous growth that is coming. He loves voting no on everything. He thinks it's good politics, but it's not. The big beautiful bill is a big winner. President Trump about 2 hours ago, continuing saying more about Rand Paul. Rand votes no on everything, but never has any practical or constructive ideas. His ideas are actually crazy. And then in parentheses, President Trump says, losers. The people of Kentucky can't stand them. This is a big growth bill. President Trump, 2 back-to-back Truth Social posts there, right there on the great Truth Social. Thank God for Truth Social, great community of people as well, just mostly on the right side of history that are on there. But it's wonderful to have it. And also, when you're watching live, some of you might be watching on Truth Social's page right now as well. So thanks for watching there. Also, of course, we always give a shout out and love Rumble as well. So wherever you're watching, thank you so much for streaming in. Again, getting ready for this great press briefing coming up at 1 o'clock. Another day of history unfolding, even though, it's June, right? It's June 3rd. It's approaching that summertime feel, which it already is in many places across the country. But as they say in the mainstream media, the news never stops, but, calm down. What we're looking to do is simply cover what's going on out there and just really keep at the forefront the truth or the common sense of what's happening. So just like President Trump is the common sense people's president, Right Side Broadcasting Network and conservative media are the common sense people's voice or media. So that's what we're doing here and have been doing that for several years now, and looking forward to more of the same for years to come on the right side of history. Okay, so we're going to go in about 4 minutes. We'll have the interview with someone at the Immigration Accountability Project. And then after that interview, we'll air the interview with the United States Space Force Colonel Nick Hague. Again, his first media interview since 77 days ago in March, where he and a team went to space to rescue 2 astronauts. If you remember that story, of course, President Trump and Elon Musk doing a great job getting the astronauts back down. Well, he's the first U.S. Space Force Guardian to ever be launched to space. And, Space Force is just celebrated, I believe it's 9 years. Can you believe it's been 9 years since President Trump created that 6th military branch? And a shout out to every military branch out there, from the Coast Guard to the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, the Marines, and even outside of that, the National Guard and Customs, Border Protection, law enforcement. And my dad used to be a detective back in the day, so I understand the law enforcement aspect, and one of my buddies, a state trooper, that kind of thing. So a big proponent, of course, of law and order, but also justice being served to those that committed lawfare crimes, or anything illegal that's happened over the past 4 years, which I'll let maybe a pundit that knows way more about all of the expertise on the legalities of it, like Ed Martin or Paul Ingrassia, the 2 greats there within the White House, Judge Jeanine Pirro and others, doing a great job. So looking forward to more of the same, looking forward to our country being saved and the corruption being lifted in every aspect of our government, and that's what we're seeing. President Trump the other day, I still can't believe it, but he still said it. He said things about treasonous thugs. He talked about treason. Our president, the commander-in-chief. So he knows what's going on out there. I just hope that everybody is on the same page. I believe that a huge percentage, if not everybody's on that same page there, as we continue to see our country be made great again. So, thanks so much for streaming in. It is 12:13, Tuesday, June 3rd. So what we'll do is this. If at 12:15, if our next guest is maybe a little bit late, what we'll do is we'll go to the interview with the United States Space Force Colonel Nick Hague. So we'll decide that in the next 120 seconds from now. Again, we're all live, and it's a fluid situation sometimes where if there's breaking news, we can divert to that. Or like yesterday, just after our broadcast ended, Karoline Leavitt approached the White House stakeout location where she was sharing some things with the media. Our team here able to pick up that video and upload it onto Rumble and YouTube and X and Truth Social, and we're able to still show you that video even if we're not live on the channel. So we're always on it here at the network to bring you as much news as possible, especially, of course, from that conservative angle, which most of the country is on that side anyway. So Thanks for sticking with us here. MyPillow.com is another sponsor, of course, we talked about earlier, but great to talk about these wonderful sponsors because they're the ones that, of course, keep us going. And also, those of you that like to donate, we could talk about that a little bit later. But RSBN is the promo code there that you could save upwards of 50% with this beach sale. So mypillow.com/RSBN. And why not talk about this real quick? This is the Go Anywhere pillow with My Lindell. How about mypillow.com with Mike Lindell, the Go Anywhere pillow. So if you're looking for a road trip or you're going on a plane trip coming up, this is good to bring on board right there, the Go Anywhere pillow, but also the beach sale too. So a lot of great stuff on there, mypillow.com/RSBN. Let's also go to Colonial Metals Group, freegoldguy.com/RSBN. Your gold and silver all 100% tax-free there when it's in a 401k or a tax-sheltered IRA. The BRICS nations like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, of course, using their own currencies or trying to instead of the US dollar. But you know what? We see our dollar hopefully every day increasing in value. Also, Maganomics increasing, inflation going down. A great sponsor, Colonial Metals Group, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. All right, let's go live right now with the Immigration Accountability Project. Chris Shumlensky is going to join us here in just a second on the split screen there live. As you were looking live there at the press briefing room. Chris, thanks so much for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Definitely. Let's talk about Boulder, Colorado right out of the gate. We saw that was an illegal immigrant. We saw a lot of things going on when it comes to illegal immigrants that are criminals in this country. Do you think by now public opinion saying, okay, well, yeah, we gotta deport people. Let's do this?
One would think so. And we've seen, leading up to Trump's election, we did see an uptick in the tolls and the number of people that support deportation. But we got to stop letting them into the country in the first place. This particular individual came in on a B visa, which is a tourist visa. We have, several hundred thousands of people that come in to the country each year on this tourist visa, and many of them overstay their visa. They're not they don't leave when their visa expires. They don't leave after the 6-month period that they're supposed to be here. This individual obviously didn't leave. He also put in a claim for asylum, and the asylum system is that what we have a process where it's very easy to get into the asylum process, but many of those folks that do get into asylum don't necessarily qualify for asylum once they get before an immigration judge, but their hearing before that judge might be 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the line. So this individual just totally gamed the system, ended up being here for a certain period of time, ended up getting employment authorization also while he was awaiting his asylum hearing. But bottom line is he should have gone home after he entered in the first place, and probably should never have even been entered into the asylum process. Many of the things that we're hoping Congress can tighten up.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing that. So you being the Immigration Accountability Project expert with all of this and people that overstay their tourist visas, what is the solution? Is there already a solution in place to kind of monitor the people that have done that?
Right. Well, we certainly need some more rules put in place for the B visas. So there's 2 different types of B visas. You can either come in as a business visitor or you can come in as a tourist. But again, the way that Congress has written those 2 visa programs is that they're very broad. They're not specific enough. So they certainly can be tightened up to ensure that people that are coming here on a tourist visa, for instance, they're only here for a very specific period of time. And then, of course, if we had a biometric entry-exit system, which was called for after 9/11, passed by Congress, but still hasn't been implemented. So we don't know when people come and then when they leave. We know when they come, but we don't know when they leave. That makes it easy for them to overstay a visa. We also need more oversight too on the worker side, but I believe this individual came in on the tourist visa, and simply we need to, 1, tighten up the rules to make sure that they're leaving when they're supposed to be leaving, and 2, if we would finally implement that biometric entry-exit system so we actually know when they leave, and if they don't leave when they're supposed to, then we can send ICE to track them down and make sure that they do leave.
Right. And outside of all of that, it's interesting that the mainstream media has still a little bit of power out there over the minds of a few people. I mean, we know the ratings are going down on the left, but still, when they're trying to sway public opinion and bring these emotional stories about illegal immigrants and criminal illegal aliens and that kind of thing, when I look at other countries, they have borders too. You can't just go to a country there without having paperwork. I mean, what is the media, for lack of a better way of asking you a question here, what are they smoking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this example of this terror attack in Boulder is a great example of that, because if you just do a simple search in your favorite search engine and look for more details on this Boulder, Colorado, the person who committed this terrible act, you're going to find very little information. It's very difficult to find out exactly what their immigration history was. Bottom line, this was somebody that was let into the country. They were allowed to enter asylum proceedings, even though they probably wouldn't qualify for asylum. They then overstayed a visa. They had employment authorization document that has expired and they're still in the country. So there were a lot of dropped balls that happened during the last administration that allowed this person to come into the country, stay here, and not ultimately leave like they were supposed to. But you can find very, very little of that. And again, most of that information is coming from more right-leaning news sources. So the media is just trying to hide the fact. But there's too much information is out there on social media and other sources, alternate media, where people can get the facts.
Exactly, and that leads me to my next question. Before I ask more about the details of the Immigration Accountability Project and how it started and how anybody can help or join, let's talk about the media cover-up. I mean, I was watching some clips from the mainstream media about the Boulder, Colorado situation, and they were saying, well, the FBI came out and said that it was a terrorist act and they shouldn't do that. They should slow roll that. Usually the local police are the ones that get ahead of the FBI, calling it that. There's not enough information that's out there. But to your point, on social media or on videos, if you see right there a video and you know that it's not a fake video and you're getting it from different sources, and you see that the police are talking about this, and we see it and watch it, and you hear the guy saying what he said the other day, Free Palestine and that kind of thing, and these threats, can't we just watch and see the evidence unfold before our eyes? Do we always need to wait? And, well, the law enforcement didn't say that it was that. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different world. It's a different world now. Yes, respect the investigation. Yes, hear it officially from law enforcement. I agree with that. However, some of them in the mainstream media, they turn a blind eye to the actual video. Weird, right?
Right, and I'm not sure who's really buying into it. I think most Americans will agree that when you throw two Molotov cocktails into a crowd of people, it's a terror attack. Let's just call a duck a duck. That's what it was. And it really insults the intelligence of the American voters to try to say, oh, no, we have to step back and we have to wait until all the facts are in, because they're so quick to jump to judgment on so many other issues. So, we can go through the Russia investigation, all these other sorts of issues that, boom, they're making a judgment call right away. But on this, they want to wait until they have all the facts in front of them.
That's a great point. That's perfect.
Yeah. So, but this is on the issue of immigration. I've been working on this issue for almost 20 years now. I see this every single day. This is something that you get from the mainstream establishment media. They're funded by big business. They are big business. They have a vested interest in a very loose immigration system. They benefit from it. So that's the line that they're going to push.
Can you talk to us about why you originally got involved with the Immigration Accountability Project, and really what is that not a sales pitch, but lack of a better way to say it, what is the Accountability Project all about?
Right. Well, we founded the group about a year and a half ago. After myself and my co-founder, Rosemary Jinks, we've been working on the immigration issue myself for 2 decades, for her 3 decades. So we've been following this issue. We've been we're familiar with the insides and outs with it, but there was really nobody that was holding elected officials and the individuals that are appointed by the administration into leadership positions. that nobody was really holding them accountable. So that's why we set out to found the Immigration Accountability Project. And on our website, iaproject.org, that's one thing that we do, is not only do we have a complete record of what every single member of Congress is doing on the immigration issue, but we're also keeping track of what the Trump administration is doing on the issue of immigration when it comes to things like executive actions, not just executive orders, but also the memos that they're putting out, the declarations, the instructions that they're sending to their agencies. So we want to provide the American people with a full picture of exactly what's happening on immigration, so they can go learn the facts and then make their own judgments.
And then outside of that, we see people like President Trump and Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller and others, Tom Homan, of course, the border czar. I mean, this is a powerful group of people that are using, let's talk about this, Chris, they're using their power for the good and the will of the people. Usually it's the other way around. They use their power for corruption. Thank God for people that are on the right side of history. I don't know if you want to chime in on that, but your thoughts.
Right. I couldn't agree more. You know, what they've done to shut down the border just in the first few months of the Trump administration is pretty spectacular. When to think that about a year ago, we had about a couple 100,000 illegal border crossings every single month. And now we're down to, just a few hundred. So it's pretty amazing what they've done on the border. We're hoping they can step up their interior enforcement, amp up those deportations, because we know there's a lot more dangerous folks running around the country. And we knew it was only a matter of time, unfortunately, where we saw a story like what happened in Boulder, Colorado. And what we're trying to do is prevent future horrible situations like that from happening again.
Chris Shimlensky, thank you so much for what you do at the Immigration Accountability Project. Tell everyone hello. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me on.
Definitely. Thank you, Chris. All right, so it's 12:26. We're about 4 minutes away from the bottom of the hour here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's bring on Carla Sands right now with the America First Policy Institute. Of course, Carla's been on Right Side Broadcasting Network a number of times, so we can maybe switch back to that programming and go to Carla here, as it's Tuesday, June 3rd. Carla, thanks so much for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Matthew, I'm so happy to be with you. It's a great day.
It is a great day. I mean, especially if that big, beautiful bill passes in the Senate, right?
Right. And I think the Senate will get it done. I know I'm hearing rumors of, this senator or that isn't going to vote for it. But I don't think these senators are actually going to cause the American people to have the largest tax increase in the history of our nation. I just don't believe it. But I do believe, Matthew, that they're going to try to get less spending, because we know the Senate is more conservative than the House is now.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to see these things happening and people becoming, realizing that it's the will of the people that really has to be the driving force of all of that. And we see that under President Trump. Let's quickly touch on the Boulder, Colorado situation. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that ICE, we already know that ICE is going full tilt, but now the public opinion, I think, is starting to swell more and be like, hey, let's really do this, guys. Yes, you're doing it, but let's amp it up even more, right?
Matthew, we have to have these deportations and they have to accelerate. This is what the American people voted for. It's an 80-20 issue. The American people want our streets to be safe. They do not want to have these radicals on our street killing people and injuring people and screaming free Palestine. They're going into restaurants across the country and harassing patrons and trying to put them on the spot and put them on film. They're burning people with Molotov cocktails. That man had 16 more Molotov cocktails. He wanted to injure or kill more people, especially people that support the Jewish hostages being held today by Hamas. We know that this is the radicalization. They want to globalize the Intifada, and that's on their posters right now, that it says globalize the Intifada. What that means is they want a global caliphate. And some of these people are LGBTQ. They don't understand that they'll be the first that they will take their lives. They want a global caliphate, Sharia law across the world. Well, that is the goal of the Islamists. They want that global caliphate. They want to retake those European countries that they controlled. They want to take the UK, Sweden, where they are growing in population. And these are not peaceful people. Many of them are radical, and they want to kill anyone that is non-Muslim or doesn't worship even the same way they do. When we look at what's happening in Texas and now Colorado, New York, it's really concerning. And so thank God President Trump is in the White House. Tom Homan is on this with ICE. But I asked Tom Homan, I said, could we go a little faster? He laughed. He's on it. His team is on it. But these radical judges, Matthew, are making it really hard to do the people's will.
Exactly. So as Representative Ronnie Jackson said the other day, the American people voted for Donald J. Trump, not activist judges. To your point, when it comes to illegal immigration, right? Whether it's somebody that is a radical Muslim, whether it's somebody that is from wherever they are, whether it's Central America, South America, Asia, regardless, if someone's here illegally, they got to go. And then secondly, I want to bring up a point. When in Europe, if you were to say what you just said, and say you were on a London international news show and you said what you just said, I wonder if you'd get a knock at your door from the UK authorities. I mean, that's how bad it is when it comes to illegal immigration and migrants there. And that more is specifically along the lines of more of a religious situation in Europe. Here, we had the situation in Colorado. But then we also have other people that aren't really, they're just doing crimes, not in the name of a religion. But, you know, so we just really have a lot of cleaning up to do, don't we?
Well, we do. It is really shocking what's happening in Europe and the UK, like you said, with the suppression of free speech. And there are hundreds of people jailed every month in the UK for what they post online and what they say, if it's not complying with the LGBTQ agenda or the Muslim agenda, then they're in trouble. And I have spoken on, the UK channels, European channels. I'll give you an example, BBC. And when I begin to state the facts, they shout me down. They stop me from speaking. Just like if you're talking on a channel like MSNBC and they'll shout or speak over you so that people can't hear the actual facts, because facts are stubborn things. They just are. But what we see is the suppression of free speech. Thank God Donald Trump was elected and saved free speech along with Elon Musk's help with X in the Western world. And we do see places where there's more free speech. I'll just give you some examples. Hungary, where I was just at CPAC Hungary, they're fighting for free speech. Poland just had a conservative elected this week, and he is going to help save free speech and the borders in Poland because Donald Tusk will now not be able to instigate or implement, the globalist agenda that he would have installed if they had the leftist candidate win this week. Today, unfortunately, South Korea had an election, and it looks like the leftist is going to win. If the leftist has won, he will be closer to China and try to probably reunify with North Korea. And so it will be a hard time for South Korea because of if this leftist does take office, which it does look like he probably will. It's a tragedy, and it seems like the Chinese Communist Party is actually controlling their election systems, the NEC there in South Korea. So there's a lot of things that have to change in order to have free elections. So we're not the only country here in the United States that's fighting for fair and free elections where one person, one vote without the irregularities.
To your point, the reform election or the runoff election in Poland, a great victory there by that leader. I actually posted on Truth Social another victory for the free world. And specifically there, the 21 million people that voted, it was all paper ballots and it was all counted in 8 hours with an election result in Poland.
And isn't that what we won here, Matthew? That's what we won in the United States. And unfortunately, like the early votes that were coming in South Korea, the ones that were coming in from overseas voters, 98.5% for the leftist candidate. Now, have you ever heard of any county that is 98.5% for one candidate? Because I haven't. I think that the fix was in, unfortunately.
And we know that happened in 2020 right here in the United States of America. Right. I mean, by far, the swing states went to President Trump the first go around. All the swing states somehow go the other way. in 2020, and then they all come back again for President Trump. And I was watching just yesterday, Carla, some old rally videos because we're about to celebrate 10 years here at Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Amazing.
And in that campaign
Congratulations.
season, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our owners and the management here as well. But in 2019, you know, the leading up to the 2020 election, the same excitement and the same huge crowds that we saw back in 15 and 16 that we just saw in 23 and 24 were happening in 19 and 20. It's the same majority of the entire United States. So thank God for it to be too big to rig this last go around. Carla Sands, thank you so much again for joining us here.
You're so welcome. It's great to be with you, Matthew. And thank you to Michael Watley, who helped to protect that vote with an army of good lawyers. And I just want to say again, Matthew, just my heart goes out to the victims there in Boulder. God bless them. And I'm so sorry it happened. And we have to get these illegals out. There's no question.
Amen. Carla Sands with America First Policy Institute. Thank you so much for your insight and joining us here on Right Side.
Thanks.
All right, so it's 12:35, Tuesday, June 3rd. We're about to air the interview with the Colonel Nick Hague of the United States Space Force in his first media interview since rescuing those two astronauts back 77 days ago in March. Before we do that, let's go to a quick sponsor, angelpaste.com out of Spring, Texas. They hire military veterans. They have some great products there. That's the Miracle Cream. There's other products online as well. So angelpaste.com on this Tuesday, June 3rd. So the next few minutes, we're going to go to the United States Space Force interview. Outside of that, it'll be wrapping up right at approaching the 1 o'clock hour. So right before the press conference with Karoline Leavitt starts there at the White House. So in the meantime, let's go to this interview with Colonel Nick Hague of the United States Space Force. And also, you're about to see some video of just remembering what it was like when there was a splashdown, when everybody was rescued back some 77 days ago. Take a look.
And there we do see Crew 9, some happy waves, smiles all around back on Earth.
We can see folks on board clapping as our first crew member.
And that is NASA astronaut Nick Hague, commander of Crew 9, now out of Crew Dragon Freedom. Some smiles, thumbs up, and a wave. Can't get any better than that.
Yeah, that is one happy camper, that's for sure. And of course, Crew 9 launched last year, is September 28th. So yeah, a little bit about the Dragon Freedom capsule. Here, a view that we have once again between the shoulders of Commander Nick Hague, who is on the left-hand side of your screen there.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Joining us now on Right Side Broadcasting Network is the United States Space Force Colonel Nick Hague. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Right Side.
Oh, Matthew, it's great to be with you today. Look forward to chatting with you and sharing a little bit about my story.
Let's talk about that. I mean, you've been home for about, 3 months? What's it like to be back on Earth now, sir?
Well, now I'm feeling pretty much back to normal, just like before I launched. But there is a couple months of fairly intensive rehabilitation, readaptation to get your body used to the weight of gravity, feeling all that pressure pulling you down. A lot of it is balance related. You haven't had to balance yourself for 6 months in orbit. And so getting back down, your mind has to reactivate those pathways. And a lot of it is all those little muscles that I didn't have to use for 6 months have kind of atrophied a little bit, and I have to build those back up. So we take our time so we don't hurt ourselves, but it's a couple months.
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty intense, but back to the flow there here on Earth. Of course, the beautiful logo there, the United States Space Force logo over your shoulder. What is it like to be the first ever Guardian to be launched into orbit, to launch into space?
I never would have imagined, I never would have imagined that happening. But I got to tell you, it's just an honor to be able to represent the service, and be able to bring a little bit of a highlight as to what the Space Force and and guardians around the world do, especially as it relates to NASA. Because, as a Space Force officer working for NASA, I'm in this unique position to fully appreciate just exactly what the Space Force does on a daily basis that makes the human exploration of space possible. They kept me safe for 6+ months from launch to landing.
That's awesome. And we're going to get more into Space Force in just a minute, sir. But what was it like when you made contact with Butch and Suni, our astronauts, and you saw them, and what was that moment like?
Yeah, so, Alex and I launched back in late September, and we had those 2 empty seats. So we knew going up that, hey, our job one is, after about 6 months, is to bring 4 people home. That's my job as the commander of Dragon Freedom. And so coming through the hatchway up there, part of it is it's exciting, on a personal front, just to come through the hatch and return to a place that feels so familiar. It's like returning home. I spent 7 months up there in 2019. And then to be surrounded, not just by Butch and Sonny, but the rest of the crew that's up there. Crew 8 was there as well, along with the cosmonauts that were there. There's 11 people crammed into a pretty tight space, and it was all hugs and laughter and smiles, and it was a moment of joy.
And so that moment's great. And then we remember you saying that there were a capsule full of smiles when you guys made splashdown.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
It is an amazing, what a ride. I see a capsule full of grins ear to ear.
That must have been the same kind of joy, no?
Absolutely. The first moment of sheer joy is when the parachutes open. Because you're like, whoo, the parachute's open. Now we just have to float down and splash down. But then once you're bobbing around in the water and it's kind of come to an end, you relax and you're looking around left and right, and everybody's just ecstatic. You've had this long mission. I was there 6 months with Alex. Butch and Sonny were there almost 9 months. It's a lot of work up there. It's a lot of separation from family. And that you're only a few hours away from being able to give your spouse a big hug and your kids, just a huge embrace.
And that leads me to my next question. So what kind of mindset do you have to be in to do what you do when it comes to that, like being away from family, but also the mission at hand? And let's be real, not many people travel to space. So, what's it been like?
Yeah, it's, there are a lot of people that do jobs where you have to separate it. In my military experience before joining NASA, my wife was active duty Air Force as well. She retired as a colonel. We had plenty of experience about doing deployments where either she deployed and I was at home, or we both deployed simultaneously. So we understood separation. I think the thing that is different, like you said, not everybody goes to space. When you deploy to space, it's broadcast live for everyone to see almost 24/7. And that's an exposure that we weren't familiar with, because usually when a service member deploys, you get emails, you get phone calls, and you stay in touch sporadically. Now she could just go onto the internet and stream, the NASA streaming service and watch me float around the station. And usually most of the coverage is when we're doing the really risky stuff. And so just that heightened sense of awareness on what's going on adds a little bit of stress there. So there is a toll, and the families do sacrifice a lot sitting down here on Earth watching us do what we do.
But speaking about being in space, did you bring anything to space and just leave it up there?
So if every astronaut that went to the space station did that, the space station would be full of stuff. And so we try to leave no trace, if you will. And so I did take a lot of little things, mementos, little things that I want to give away as gifts to friends and family on the ground. But I brought them all back with me. Actually, I wasn't able to bring them back with me because it's tight quarters inside of a Crew Dragon. And so I had to wait for one of the cargo vehicles to bring it down, and it just splashed down a couple weeks ago. So I'm waiting anxiously to get my bag full of gifts so I can start giving them away.
That's going to be awesome to be on the receiving end of something like that, sir. Do you think that one day everyday citizens will take part in space travel tourism? First of all, I'll answer that. I don't want to at this point, but if a bunch of people do,
why not?
I mean,
why not?
I'm not ready, sir. I'm not ready. I mean, if you're going to go, if you're going to command the ship, I'll go.
Okay, I'll hold you to it. I hope more people get involved. Part of after I come back from a mission, part of the job is getting out and talking about what the mission was and what it's like to be up there, to share that experience. But there's no better way to share that experience than to be there with somebody. And so the sense of perspective that you get, the fragility of our Earth and how small it is against the backdrop of the cosmos and all of those stars, just the cloudy soup of light that's out there in the universe, and you just know it's so large, and you see Earth kind of gliding below you, and it's so small. That perspective on how we're all on this planet together and how we need to do what we can to support us. We all live in this balance on this small little oasis. I think the world would be such a better place if everybody could have just a taste of that perspective. So my only wish is if I could take everybody that I talk to about space to space with me, that's what I'd want. I know it's not for everybody, but it is an amazing experience.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? So would there be a moment that, it's silent, you look outside or in space and it's just quiet? What kind of deeper reflection did you have outside of what you just said there? I mean, is it just very like, wow, I can't believe that I'm seeing this right now?
Yeah, so the space station's going around the Earth once every 90 minutes. And so 45 minutes in the light, 45 minutes in the dark. And so as you're in the light, I can look and see, 1,000 miles on either side of me. And so we come up over the west coast of the U.S. I can see all the way from Seattle down to Los Angeles and just take that all in one view. And that's just kind of looking out one side. And so it seems small, and you don't see like all the borders between states and all that. You just see geography. And during the day, it's almost hard to see cities. At night they pop out with lights, but during the day, cities kind of blend into the terrain. And so you see Earth. You don't necessarily see a lot of man-made structure. But the thing that's most special is like during the day, you can't hardly see any stars because the sun is so bright. Your eyes are pinched down, trying to block all that light out. And so the sky is black. But then the sun sets. And then the brightest stars come out. And then slowly over the next 5 to 10 minutes, your eyes dilate and you're able to see more and more. And as they dilate, you see more stars. And then you start to see faint, clouds. And at some point you're like, there can't be any more stars. I've never seen a sky that has this many stars. And it just keeps becoming more like the universe is just slowly unveiling itself deeper and deeper as far as it's allowing your naked eye to see. And then in the foreground is the horizon of the Earth, and the atmosphere glows at night. And that little glow, in that little glow, there's a couple miles up and a couple miles down. And in that little ribbon around the Earth is everything we know that's alive. Everything we care about is right there. And so you get that sense of there's something so much larger than us, and how we're fragile. The Earth is fragile, and we need to work together. And I think that ultimately is the lesson that I took away from all my experience, all my time down there at NASA over the last 10 plus years, is that to do the really hard things, we have to work together.
Exactly. And, I was just thinking about your time in space. I mean, you have spent 374 days, more than a year of space time out there. When you were in your 20s, did you have any idea that you would have been a former United States Air Force person, also a United States Space Force astronaut, the first Guardian to ever go to space to rescue 2 astronauts, and thanks to President Trump and Elon Musk? I mean, that whole resume just right there, sir. In your 20s, what were you thinking then?
If I think back to my 20s, I was trying to graduate college and get through finals. And, the ambition of I was interested in space. In college, I studied, astronautical engineering, so how to build rockets, how to build satellites. Space has always intrigued me, even since I was a little kid. And so I had this vague idea, this vague ambition that that's something that I wanted to do. But if you'd asked me to try to map out everything along the way, I never would have come close to mapping it the way it happened, which I think is, that's part of that's why life is so amazing, right? You can't predict what's going to happen. And if you had asked me to choose what was going to happen, I would have made poor choices that wouldn't have eventually led me to here. And so some of it, I'm thankful for all the opportunity, like you said, growing up in the military, the benefits I had of serving my nation in the Air Force and then also in the Space Force, it developed me into who I am and put me on this path.
I'm sure the speaking engagements are lining up. I'm sure when you walk the rings of the Pentagon, you're a superstar, in my opinion, and I know we the people believe the same thing, because of obviously being an American hero, saving these astronauts, being the first Guardian to space. Any invitations to the Oval Office or anything like that coming up?
We're just getting started on kind of this post-flight, go out and tell the story and share the experience. And so I've got a team of people that are trying to maximize my time, and I'm letting them do their job, and look forward to just getting out there and shaking as many hands as I can, giving away some of those gifts, and just being able, as best I can, try to tell, share a little bit of that experience, give a little bit of that magic to everybody.
For everyday Americans, why is the United States Space Force so important to all of us?
Yeah, so I'd like to say thank you to all the leadership. I can tell you that while I was on the space station, when I was preparing to launch, all of the last minute changes that were occurring in terms of the crew composition, while we were up there all the way through landing, it was clear to me that leadership cared, that we were safe, that the mission continues, and that there was value in what we were doing on the space station. The idea of performing research and gaining knowledge for the benefit of humanity. It's just such a special mission, and the way that we do it in an international way is just unique, and it's a positive model for the world. And that leads directly to your second question, which is, Guardians around the globe provide the stability and the opportunity in space for NASA to be able to do its civil mission. Without what the Space Force brings to the table, we're not able to do the human exploration of space.
Exactly, and it's wonderful to see that the United States Space Force is now, 9 years ago, thanks to President Trump for creating the branch there. Real quick shift outside of all of this. Do you have any hobbies outside of flying to space, sir?
Yeah, I like to be dad. Dad is pretty good, a pretty good pastime. It's the space business. Fortunately, I love what I do because it is all consuming, and it does take a lot of time. And so hobbies when I can. I enjoy getting to the mountains and enjoying some different types of elevation and enjoying the view from there. But it's fun.
Any advice for people that are going to say, you know what, I want to do some space exploration, some travel as a citizen, anything that they should know before they go?
Yeah, you got to do your homework, right? And we talked about a lot of things, but I've only touched the very top of it. And so I invite people to go out and to look at what's going on there, to find out. We've talked about the Space Force mission. So go to spaceforce.com/AstroNick, and that'll point you in the right direction. So you can get more information about what did I mean when I said Space Force does all these things that are so important. And then when I talk about the International Space Station, go to nasa.gov and look at some of the information there. We've been doing that mission of peaceful exploration as an international collaboration between 15 countries for 2.5 decades now. There's been somebody living and working in space for over 2.5 decades. And it's exciting times ahead, and we need people to get involved because the space station's end of life is coming, and we're eagerly anticipating the commercial replacement for that so that we can maintain presence, human presence, U.S. presence and leadership in low Earth orbit.
And final question for you, Colonel. Thanks again, first of all, for joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. When President Trump does commencement addresses, he always shares insight of advice of how he got to where he is. And many speakers do that. Sir, you're the first astronaut I've ever interviewed. This is quite an honor to interview you. Any advice for people out there, whatever industry they're in, just life advice that you have and how you got to where you got?
If I think back, I think there's one theme for me that rings true is that, I didn't accomplish things on my own. It's with the love and support of friends and family and colleagues and working as part of teams that I was able to do the things that I've done. And it's realizing that I don't have all the answers. And probably the biggest thing is when you need help, you raise your hand, you ask for help, you reach out to somebody. And then when somebody does that to you, you return the favor.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Colonel Nick Hague of the United States Space Force. Commander, thank you so much, and welcome back to Earth.
Thanks, Matthew. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. All right, back here looking live now at the White House press briefing room there, getting a little bit more crowded as we get ready for Karoline Leavitt to take to the podium there to share with us a little bit of maybe the programming notes for the president coming up. We do know that he will take part and participate in a law enforcement roundtable. Also, the new chancellor from Germany, Friedrich Merz, will be in Washington on Thursday. So a foreign visit, yet another foreign visit to Washington, D.C. on Thursday. So you can count on us for all of that live coverage coming up, including wall-to-wall, this entire press briefing. I know that's why you guys are here on this live link today with Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook, Truth Social, Getter, and others. Thanks so much for streaming in as we get ready to hear from the great Karoline Leavitt. Let's also go to a number of our great sponsors here, including allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. If you're looking to save upwards of 20% on things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue, amoxicillin, penicillin. There are more than 200 essential medications available there. You can go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN for more information. Also, Colonial Metals Group, freegoldguide.com/RSBN. All about getting that free gold guide to learn all about Colonial Metals Group. Gold and silver, backing up the U.S. dollar when it comes to a tax-sheltered IRA, a 401k. All 100% tax-free. Colonial Metals Group, freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Also, Tax Network USA, another great sponsor here. And if you have to settle any back taxes or you have any questions about that, getting the ball rolling is just the first step. And you can do that with this great patriotic company, Tax Network USA, 800-357-1415. That's the phone number, of course. Or you can go to tnusa.com/RSBN. We are 3 minutes from the top of the hour. And at 1 o'clock is the scheduled press conference that we will go to as soon as we see Karoline Leavitt. Again, if you remember weeks ago, there was a video that Margot Martin at the White House there put on social media showing that Karoline Leavitt and the team, the Office of Communication, were praying before they go out there to the press briefing. It's pretty cool that they honor God and ask God to be with them as they go out there and face those questions. But and to those that think anything's weak when you pray to God, well, let's just put it this way. God's the one, obviously, that created everything out of nothing. So it's always good to pray, always good to praise Him, thank Him, and love Him, as that is the number one reason why we're all here, is to know our God, of course. And for those of us that believe through Jesus, that's a beautiful way to get it done, is through Jesus Christ. But outside of that, those of you that are believing whatever you believe, thanks so much for watching, as we are all about freedom and conservatism here at this network. And we're looking forward to hearing that truth and transparency yet again from Karoline Leavitt and from this White House. And it's historic truth and transparency. There has not been a White House that has done what this White House is doing. Yes, there was a lot of similarities in 45 when it comes to the first go-around. He won the second go-around in 2020, but we saw what happened there. But now that he's back, learned a lot over the past several years, right? So taking all that knowledge and being on the right side of history with common sense, and being the people's president, the common sense president, with a common sense party that we have here in America. America first, all the way. US of A, right? So looking forward to seeing another rally one of these days with President Trump. How cool would that be? I know there was just one in Pittsburgh, but hearing that electrifying USA chant is always fun. Speaking of big events and secure events, there are security checkpoints and all that, but outside of that, on June 14th in Washington, D.C., the 250th anniversary for the United States Army will take place. We'll have that coverage right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. There's actually some different graphics that are out there now from the U.S. Army. This directly from the U.S. Army, 1775 to 2025 and onward. As you see, some of the firework display that will be there as well that night. And then you see here, 1775 there, George Washington over the Potomac there. And I saw a post on the U.S. Army. It said, before there was a nation, there was an army. Well, there you go. That's some of the graphics that you see there with the U.S. Army there with the 250 logo. We'll have wall-to-wall coverage that day from Washington, D.C., right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We'll have it live. That's Saturday, June 14th. More than 6,000 soldiers will be taking part in that. 150 vehicles, 50 helicopters, Arlington, Virginia, the National Mall in D.C., the Pentagon, and also, of course, a parade and fireworks to follow. And that's just this coming June. Wait till July 4th of next year in 2026 in Iowa when there is the 250th celebration of our entire country. So a lot of celebrations to be had. Outside of that, looking forward to more wins, one day at a time. My buddy and I used to call it, this is kind of corny, but it is what it is. Instead of, it's the tortoise and the hare, right? It's the rabbit and the turtle. Instead of running real fast as the rabbit and then just relaxing and chilling out, it's the slow and steady wins the race, the turtle, right? So every day we win here in this country. Every day that we continue on with those 20 core promises, we see more wins. So hopefully we see, of course, justice being served where that needs to be done. And also seeing all the files that the government said they'll share with us. Representative Ana Paulina Luna said that there's this government declassification task force of government secrets that will be released to the American people. This was something that was said a few months back. So monitoring when all of those are out. But yeah, so we're keeping our eyes on all sorts of different news items here at the network. So thanks again for joining us live at 1:01 Eastern Time. Getting ready now to go to the press briefing room there in Washington, D.C. And we thank all of our sponsors for being a part of this broadcast. And we have another broadcast coming up. Robert McNeely in studio, 2:30 Eastern, the Senate Judiciary Joint Subcommittee hearing to examine district judges versus President Trump. So, of course, they look at Representative Ronnie Jackson, who said recently, the American people voted for Donald J. Trump, not activist judges who are trying to stop the agenda that we, the people, and the will of the people want through President Trump. We saw all those campaign speeches. We heard all the promises. Well, a lot of them are being filled right now, and we look forward to all of them being filled over the next several years of this administration. So thank God for President Trump. Thank God for conservative media. And thank God for Right Side Broadcasting Network. All right, let's get ready to go live there to Washington, as we will have, again, another live broadcast coming up. If you're just joining us now, you might have seen some of the interview with the United States Space Force Colonel Nick Hague, who joined us earlier this morning to talk about that whole Falcon 9 flight back 77 days ago when the two astronauts were rescued thanks to President Trump, Elon Musk, Space Force, NASA, the United States Space Force. And Nick Hague, was the commander and the lead of that trip, the first Guardian ever to travel to space. So we had that interview. If you'd like to watch it after the press conference here, you can do that on replay. But grateful for the opportunity here at the network, because it's 1:03 Eastern Time. You have a packed house there for the press availability, so we'll be going there in just a second. Couple more points before we do. One, again, the new German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, will be in Washington the day after tomorrow, so on Thursday. And then we also know that the president will participate in a law enforcement roundtable coming up. So as soon as we hear about that, we'll bring that to you as well. Wouldn't it be great if one of these days at the press briefing, President Donald J. Trump would show up at the podium, which has happened in the first administration. So wouldn't that be fun if that would be today? I have no insight on that. It would just be kind of cool. But he obviously is very truthful and transparent when it comes to a lot of things anyway. When it comes to being in the Oval Office, signing an executive order, he's always taking time with the press there. So yeah, looking forward to hearing from the White House press secretary. Again, if you'd like to follow us on Right Side Broadcasting Network on X, it's at RSB Network. On Truth Social, it's at RSBN. Thanks so much for watching over the years as we're about to celebrate 10 years of conservative media and covering all of those Trump rallies and events over the years. And as we continue into the future, just covering, common sense, politics, and news from afar here in Alabama, but also, of course, when we have an opportunity, we do get to go to the White House. The other day, we were at the Eisenhower Executive Office building interviewing White House officials. Of course, Robert McNeely was on Air Force One a few weeks back. And there's maybe some more return trips, of course, to the nation's capital, as that is where it's all happening when it comes to the policy decisions, but also where the great leader that we have here in this country is leading the way. And also a shout out from President Trump to the new president of Poland who just won, who is all about making Poland great again. So 21 million people voted in that election, all paper ballots, all of it counted in 8 hours, and a great win by the conservative candidate there. And I put on my Truth Social, another victory for the free world on, if you'd like to follow at Matthew Alvarez or just check it out. But it's a pretty cool video that they put out in Poland. But again, all about the free world, all about leading the way here in this country with Donald J. Trump at the helm. So looking forward to tossing it there live to the White House press briefing room as those TV screens, as you just saw, maybe just popped on. So let's go there now and listen in there live. If it's a little delayed, after maybe a minute, we'll come back here to the studio here in Auburn. But in the meantime, let's go to Washington, D.C. right now.
Thank you. Just send it through. All right, nice. Yeah, no problem.
So we are back here. Of course, you just heard the thing say, or the podium there, or the speaker say, 2 minutes until the briefing. So we know that about a minute and 40 seconds from now, it will start right there in Washington, D.C. Again, 1:06, Tuesday, June 3rd. This is our first broadcast of the day. We'll be starting up another one in just a bit at about 2:30. Specifically, let me get to the specifics on that broadcast, which I'm finding right now on our Truth Social account. It says at 2:30 Eastern, the Senate Judiciary Joint Subcommittee, the hearing to examine district judges versus President Trump. So I believe Texas Senator Ted Cruz will be involved in that Senate Judiciary Joint Subcommittee hearing. So looking forward to hearing from him and looking forward to hearing about the fact that President Trump and we the people should have our way, and activist judges, they shouldn't. President Trump has the power as the executive leader of that executive branch. And of course, the will of the people, pretty strong too, as we are a country and a government of, by, and for the people. And President Trump is the leader of that. So it's awesome to see it. All right, so I think in about 20 seconds from now, we'll see Karoline Leavitt. Let's go back there live to Washington, D.C.
You changed the subject to guns.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Good. It's good to see all of you. I want to start by addressing the horrific act of violence that took place on Sunday in Boulder, Colorado. President Trump and the entire administration's hearts go out to the victims, and they are in our prayers during this unimaginable time. According to reporting from Fox News, the alleged attacker admitted in an interview that he wanted to kill all Zionist people and had been planning the attack for over a year and would do it again if he could. This monster used a makeshift flamethrower and Molotov cocktails to light Jewish Americans on fire in an attempt to burn them alive. The victims at the incident location in Boulder were there to rally in support of Israeli hostages who remain in Hamas captivity. 12 were injured, including a Holocaust survivor. This is pure evil. The Department of Justice has already filed federal hate crime charges against the alleged perpetrator, and he will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. This tragedy is a sobering reminder of the consequences of the Biden administration's failed policies. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the Boulder suspect is an Egyptian national who was in the United States illegally. He entered the U.S. during the Biden administration in August 2022 on a B-2 visa until it expired. Upon the visa expiration, he overstayed, filed an asylum claim, and was given a work authorization by the Biden administration. Instead of deporting this heinous individual, Joe Biden's administration allowed him to stay in our country and to work. President Trump sounded the alarm over these reckless Biden policies for years because this is the predictable result of letting anti-American radicals and illegal immigrants pour into our country. Immigration security is national security. And that's why the Trump administration, at the direction of our great president, has secured our border, strengthened our immigration system, and has taken immediate steps to protect the United States from foreign terrorists and other public safety threats. President Trump acted swiftly upon taking office to reform our visa issuance process to ensure that dangerous aliens who are intent on harming Americans or our national security interests are no longer admitted into our country. Under the Trump administration, aliens will only be admitted into the United States through the legal process and only if they do not bear hostile attitudes towards our citizens, our culture, our government, our institutions, or most importantly, our founding principles. Under President Trump, the United States has zero tolerance for foreign visitors who support terrorism. Violators of U.S. law, including international students, will continue to face visa denial or revocation and deportation. And illegal alien criminals will continue to be arrested and deported from our country. On that note, ICE and federal law enforcement partners just wrapped up a month-long surge operation arresting nearly 1,500 illegal aliens in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. During the enhanced operation, dubbed Operation Patriot, ICE Boston and other federal law enforcement personnel focused on transnational organized crime, gangs, and dangerous illegal alien offenders throughout Mass. More than half of the nearly 1,500 illegals arrested had significant criminal convictions or charges pending against them. Here are just some of the violent illegal aliens who were removed from communities in Massachusetts during Operation Patriot. A Salvadorian national with active Interpol red notice for aggravated homicide. A Guatemalan national and registered sex offender who had pending criminal charges in Boston for 5 counts of indecent assault and battery on a person 14 or over. A Honduran national who was last arrested for rape, indecent assault, and battery of a person 14 or over. A Colombian national charged with kidnapping, aggravated rape, and indecent assault and battery on a person 14 or over. And a Guatemalan national who was convicted of murder in Boston. Also, a Brazilian national who was charged with aggravated rape of a child by force and possession of child pornography. Again, these are people who are living in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And lastly, a Salvadorian national whose criminal history includes charges of aggravated rape of a child by force. I don't think anybody in this room wants these types of heinous criminals in your communities. And it's thanks to this administration that they are being removed from our country. When Democrat-run jurisdictions released violent illegal alien criminals back into communities after making arrests instead of turning them over to federal immigration enforcement like they should, those Democrats are putting law-abiding Americans at risk. And these insane policies force law enforcement officials to make much more difficult arrests that put their lives, our law enforcement lives, in jeopardy. President Trump is incredibly grateful for our heroic officers on the front lines getting these violent illegal alien invaders out of our communities. law and order is back in America under President Trump. And on that same note, there are new crime statistics that show crime is plummeting. In fact, Politico summed it up like this. Murder rates are tumbling across the U.S. in 2025. Homicide stats are down at least 20% over last year, and we could be on course for the lowest number on record. With President Trump in charge, the days of criminals being put over victims are over. On the topic of immigration, the Washington Post just ran one of the most ridiculous headlines ever, even by their standards. And on my very first briefing, several months ago, I said I would hold anyone accountable in this room. The Washington Post actually had this headline, "The mysterious drop in fentanyl seizures on the U.S.-Mexico border." How is this mysterious? There is no mystery about why there is a decrease in fentanyl coming into the United States. This administration's strong border policies are the reason there has been a decrease in fentanyl trafficking. His strengthened relationship with Mexican President Sheinbaum and all of the measures he has been taking to deter illegal human and drug trafficking at our United States southern border is the reason for plummeting fentanyl seizures at the U.S. border. There is nothing mysterious about that, and we'd like to see the Washington Post update their headline accordingly. This is clearly trying to intentionally manipulate the minds of the Americans, and I think the American people understand why there's been a fentanyl drop. And our office responded to this inquiry. We provided a whole host of the reasons that fentanyl seizures at the southern border have dropped, and the Washington Post refused to run them, and that's despicable. In other news, positive economic reports continue to flood in. Inflation dropped to 2.1% in April. Personal income increased 0.8% in April. So inflation is down and wages are up. That's almost triple the expectations and against the doubts of nearly everyone in this room. And we also saw the largest monthly decline in the trade deficit on record as a result of President Trump's very powerful tariffs. Lastly, the price of eggs has dropped more than 61% since President Trump took office in January. I remember my very first briefing, I was asked about the cost of eggs. The reporter tried to insinuate it was this administration's fault, even though he had only been here for a few days or weeks. It was a result of the previous administration's terrible policies, and in record time, this president has fixed that problem that he inherited from Joe Biden, and now egg prices have dropped 61% since this president took office. There's a lot of good news, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so let's get to them. We have just the news in our new media seat today. Amanda Head, thank you for being with us. Why don't you kick us off?
Sure, thank you so much. There is a disturbing trend of anti-Semitism turning into terrorism. Of course, the Boulder, Colorado instance that you just mentioned, the 2 Israeli embassy staffers who were murdered, Pennsylvania governor's mansion with the Jewish governor inside getting set on fire. Does the president consider this domestic terrorism? And as such, are there official alerts to law enforcement, BOLOs, task forces, things like that?
The president has made it very clear, as he said in his statement yesterday, that yes, these anti-Semitic acts of violence are do qualify as terrorism, and he does not want to see terrorism or violence of any form taking place in the United States of America. And as for specifically anti-Semitic terrorism and anti-Semitic acts of violence and those that are targeting Jewish Americans, this administration has done more to combat that violence than any administration in history. And one incident is one too many, and I think, frankly, that's something the previous administration was not willing to say. This president will stand up for Americans of all religions, of all faiths, of all creeds, and we will continue to look at policy measures and actions that we can take in addition to the actions that have already been taken to curb this anti-Semitic violence. And to Jewish Americans at home, across the country, this president has your back.
And then on another issue, back in February, Secretary Kennedy created a commission to re-examine the childhood vaccine schedule. But there are still states outstanding like California, Connecticut, Maine that are not allowing any religious exemptions for kids not only to go to school but to participate in sports and extracurricular activities. Would the president want to see religious exemptions allowed across all 50 states? And how do you enforce that, especially with states like California that are already defying the president on the men and women's sports issue?
Generally speaking, I know the president supports religious exemptions for families when it comes to vaccinations. As for the instances in those specific states, I'll have the administration and the White House look into it and see what executive action, if any, we can take on that front. Thank you. Kelly.
Good afternoon.
We're now in hurricane season, and obviously there is great concern every year about the potential for that. Can you speak to how the president is planning to have the level of support, should it be needed, to be as it has been with a reduction in the workforce? And is he still comfortable with Administrator Richardson, who had talked, whether joking or not, about not being aware of a hurricane season for this country? What is the president's level of briefings on what may be required? If you could give us kind of an overall update on that.
Sure. Well, of course, we know that we are into hurricane season now, and I know FEMA is taking this seriously, contrary to some of the reporting we have seen based on jokes that were made and leaks from meetings. But Secretary Kristi Noem and the FEMA leadership are all over this. They are committed to ensuring that federal resources and tax dollars are there for Americans in need. And the president continues to review requests for emergency aid and carefully considering them. However, this president has made it clear we're not going to enable states to make bad decisions with federal tax dollars and then have the federal government later have to bail these states out. We want to see states be responsible with their tax dollars to do as much as they possibly can, and then the president will deeply and thoughtfully consider any requests for federal aid that come to his desk. And I think some of the media reporting we've seen on this is frankly sloppy and irresponsible. There are serious people who are taking this issue seriously, starting with the president himself, who, as you know, on his first domestic trip back in office, visited both North Carolina and California, both of which were, of course, hit by natural disasters when he wasn't even president, but he took ownership of that and visited those places and those people immediately.
Is it
Brian?
About hurricane season appropriate, though, now that this is serious business, as you talked about?
It's serious business, Kelly, and I'm not going to engage in such fodder with a question like that. Brian?
Thank you, Caroline. Reuters was reporting that there is a letter that is meant to be sent to other countries, which would give these countries a deadline of Wednesday to produce their best offer on the trade matter. Why does the administration feel the need to send this letter? And I have one more follow-up on trade.
Sure. I can confirm the merits and the content of the letter. USTR sent this letter to all of our trading partners just to give them a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up. And they are in talks. Ambassador Greer, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick are in talks with many of our key trading partners around the globe. As you know, Brian, I know the Wall Street Journal has covered this quite heavily. And they continue to be engaged in those discussions. And this letter was simply to remind these countries that the deadline is approaching and the president expects good deals, and we are on track for that, I will emphasize.
On the trade side, though, when the deal with the United Kingdom, there was this idea of a reprieve on the auto tariffs. Is the president looking to do another similar deal on the sector-by-sector reduction in tariffs, or is this more going to be deals related to the reciprocal tariffs that were announced months ago?
Well, as I've said previously from the podium, and the president has discussed as well, each country has unique advantages, unique challenges to it based on their markets and what they export to us and what we export to them. And so that's why the president smartly advised his trade team to engage in tailor-made deal-making. And we saw that with the United Kingdom, and we will see that with other countries as well.
Kate. Does the president support the Senate moving forward with the bill imposing heavy sanctions on Russia?
Look, the president has spoken about his position on sanctions on Russia. He has smartly kept this as a tool in his toolbox if necessary, but I think the Senate and everyone on Capitol Hill respects the president as the commander-in-chief for a reason. And as you know, Russia and Ukraine engaged in direct talks yesterday. That was at the encouragement of this president when he spoke to both leaders of both countries via phone just a couple of weeks ago. And so I would just like to remind everybody how far we have come in just 4 months. I mean, it was inconceivable last year at this time for Russia and Ukraine to be engaged in direct talks. And it's because of the president's insistence and determination to get this war to an end that these countries sat down yesterday. So he's willing to use sanctions if he needs them, and the Senate and the Capitol Hill understand that the president is the commander-in-chief and he's leading United States foreign policy as he should.
And on a Iran, the president said that the U.S. would not allow for any uranium enrichment, but the proposal offered to the Iranians reportedly allows for low levels of enrichment. Can you explain that discrepancy?
I'm not going to comment on alleged details of the report. We're not going to negotiate through the media out of respect for these ongoing discussions and negotiations that Special Envoy Witkoff is leading. The president made his position very clear on Truth Social last night. In fact, it couldn't be any more clear, and I would reiterate that's his position. Special Envoy Witkoff sent a very detailed and acceptable proposal to the Iranian regime that the president hopes they will accept, and if not, they will face grave consequences, as the president himself has reiterated. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline.
You're welcome.
A couple of things, if I may. Firstly, can you confirm whether or not President Trump is going to be going to the NATO summit in The Hague later this month?
I can confirm he will be going to the NATO summit, yes.
Great, thanks. And another question on the Netherlands, in fact. Just wondering if you have any reaction to the collapse of the Dutch government there after the anti-EU and anti-Islam leader Geert Wilders, who's been described as a Dutch Trump, pulled out of the government there.
I don't have a comment on that, but certainly we should and we will get you one, okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome. Brett.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask, a couple days ago, the president announced that he was withdrawing the nomination of Jared Isaacman to lead NASA, citing a thorough review of prior associations. I wondered, why did this review happen just now, after the nominee was so far into the process? And can you explain the president's thinking on who he might choose?
Look, the president reserves the right to nominate individuals to key administration posts. He also reserves the right to remove those individuals if he chooses, just like he reserves the right to fire anybody in the executive branch that he wants. And so a new replacement for NASA will be announced very soon, as the president himself said.
Was there something in particular that came up that caused the president concern with this nomination?
The president wants to ensure that all of his nominees are aligned fully with the America First mission of this administration. And again, he will be announcing a replacement very soon. Andrew, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
It's been just about a month since President and Prime Minister Starmer announced...
I can't see you all the way back there. Phil's head is in the way. There you go.
So it's been just about a month since Prime Minister Starmer and President Trump announced that the U.S. and U.K. had reached a trade deal, or at least a framework for a deal. Now there are at least some conservative MPs in London who are complaining that Parliament has not yet seen the text of any deal. So I'd like to ask you from this side of the pond, is there a text for the deal ready to be released, submitted? And if not, when can we expect it? And then I have one more.
There's most definitely text with this deal. There is language that this side has seen. You'll have to ask the UK Parliament why they haven't seen it from their own government. I obviously can't answer that question.
And on Caroline, one more on Ukraine, please.
Sure, go ahead.
On Ukraine, it's been a couple days since Ukraine made that audacious drone strike on Russian airfields. The president hasn't said a word about it, and usually he's not shy about making his thoughts known on the war. Or, it's not bad on the war or any other subject. What have you heard from him on this audacious drone strike? Is he surprised? He said that Zelensky didn't have the cards when they met in the Oval Office a few months back. Does Zelensky possibly have some cards that the president hadn't known about?
Look, the president's thinking on the Russia-Ukraine war as it stands, I spoke to him about it just this morning, is he remains positive at the progress that we've seen. Again, he urged both leaders to sit down and talk directly with one another, and they did that. Russia handed over a memorandum of peace, or a peace plan, or a suggestion of one, I understand, to the Ukrainian side. They also agreed upon the exchange of prisoners or hostages from each other's countries. So he remains positive about the progress that we're seeing, but he also is a realist, and he realizes these are two countries that are at war and have been for a long time because of his predecessor's weakness and incompetence. So he's working hard to solve this conflict, and that's where his mind is right now on it. Jonathan, go ahead.
Thank you. Same topic, just to put a finer point on it. Does President Trump approve of Ukraine's decision to strike nuclear-capable bombers in Russia?
I would like to let the president speak on that himself.
And just to follow up, has the president...
I would just add to that, the president does not want to see this war prolonged. He wants the fighting to stop, he wants people to stop dying, and he wants this to be solved at the negotiating table. The reason he is so deeply involved and has spent so much time and effort on this war is because he hates to see people dying. Again, these are not Americans that are being killed. These are Russians and these are Ukrainians. This is a war very far away. But this president truly cares about peace, and that's what he wants to see.
What is President Trump doing to ensure that a similar internal drone attack doesn't happen here in the US, given this was done at pretty low cost, very stealthily? You know, it obviously raises questions about our own security, particularly for US aircraft here.
It absolutely does, and that's why the president nominated Secretary Hegseth and has approved some of the changes that have been made at the Pentagon to ensure that we have the most lethal fighting force in the world, and that the United States military is the best, the biggest. That's why he wants the One Big Beautiful Bill to be passed, because it increases our defense spending. It's why he also launched the announcement of the Golden Dome to prevent from missile strikes and attacks in the future. And the president has a full understanding, I can tell you because I've spoken to him about it, about the future of warfare and how drones are a big part of that. And I will not get ahead of our policy team, but I think you can expect to see some executive action on that front in the very near future.
Caroline.
Caitlin.
Two questions for you as well. On the Big Beautiful Bill, you said recently that it is, quote, blatantly wrong to say that it adds to the deficit. You essentially said that an estimate from the Congressional Budget Office and other scorekeepers you believe are wrong. But Republicans like Ron Johnson and Rand Paul disagree. They are saying that it will add to the deficit. That is their concern. Is the White House's position that those two Republican senators are, quote, blatantly wrong?
It is. Those senators, it's not news that they disagree with this president on policy, and the president has vocally called them out for it and for their not having their facts together. I would add the Congressional Budget Office has been historically wrong. In fact, they predicted the Trump tax cuts from the president's first term in 2017. Their prediction was wrong by $500 billion. Those tax cuts had nearly $500 billion more of revenue than the Congressional Budget Office scored. And I would also point out, I don't think many people know this, there hasn't been a single staffer in the entire Congressional Budget Office that has contributed to a Republican since the year 2000. But guess what? There have been many staffers within the Congressional Budget Office who have contributed to Democrat candidates and politicians every single cycle since. So unfortunately, this is an institution in our country that has become partisan and political, and we are very confident in our own economic analyses of this bill. There is $1.6 trillion in savings, and our Office of Management and Budget Director, Russ Vought, is a fiscal hawk. He is well known in this city for being a well-respected fiscal hawk. He has tools at his disposal to produce even more savings. And as you know, the White House will be sending our rescissions package to Capitol Hill today.
And on immigration, the other day that the Homeland Security Secretary said, and I'm quoting her now, that an illegal alien threatened to assassinate President Trump and highlighted his arrest. A man has now admitted to framing him, saying that he wrote the letter that the DHS Secretary Christina posted online. Last I checked before I came into the room, that post was still up from DHS. Does the White House expect them to issue a clarification or a correction on that front?
We can ask the Department of Homeland Security and get back to you. Jeff.
Caroline, is the United States putting pressure on China to release its hold on rare earths that are hurting car companies and technology companies now that require that for their products? And is that pressure working?
Well, I can assure you that the administration is actively monitoring China's compliance with the Geneva Trade Agreement. I know the United States, on our end, we have complied with the terms that we set, and our administration officials continue to be engaged in correspondence with their Chinese counterparts. And as you all know, and I know there's a lot of interest in it, there will be a leader-to-leader talk very soon. And when that happens, as always, we will let you know.
Also in Asia, does the White House have a reaction to the results of the election in South Korea?
Yes, we do. In fact, let me find it here for you. It should be somewhere in here. Thank you. We do not, but I will get you on, Jeff. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. Two questions on trade. Is this letter that was sent to trading partners a sign that the president isn't satisfied with the pace of these negotiations? Is he trying to light a fire under these talks now?
Well, look, the president has been very direct to our trading partners in his conversations with them, with foreign leaders directly, that they need to cut deals with the United States of America. The tariff agenda of this president, he believes very strongly in it. And as you've all seen, he's unafraid to use tariffs to protect our industries and protect our workers. But he wants to see these tailor-made deals be signed. And I will tell you, of course, I never want to be the one negotiating with the press about these internal discussions and deliberations. But our team, who is deeply deeply involved in this, sees these deals moving in the right direction. In fact, Ambassador Greer is in Paris right now meeting with many of our trading partners.
We should still expect this flurry of deals in the next 36 days, and the plan is still for those full tariffs to go back into effect on July 9th.
The plan is for the announcement of these deals to be made very, very soon, yes. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
So Governor Whitmer confirmed that she spoke with President Trump about the possibility of pardoning the plotters against her, the kidnapping case. She didn't give us an idea of what the president's reaction was to that. Do you have any information about what he said?
Well, I won't reveal the president's private discussion unless he gives me liberty to, but I will reiterate what he said publicly when he was asked by one of the journalists in this room in the Oval Office a couple of weeks ago about the pardons. He said it's something he would look at, nothing more, nothing less. Haley, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline.
And then to Kelly next to you.
Thank you. When it comes to the leader-to-leader call with Xi Jinping this week, what is the president's expectation of this call? Is he looking for concrete outcomes out of this, or is he looking to kind of warm relations as these trade talks are ongoing?
Well, President Trump and President Xi have shared a respectful relationship throughout the years. And again, I won't get ahead of the president on that call. But as always, after, you'll hear directly from the president or from myself or someone else here at the White House. Kelly.
Caroline, thank you. I want to get back to the anti-Semitic behavior that's been going on college campuses, as well as recently in Boulder, Colorado. The president, as you know, has the White House Faith Office, the Religious Liberty Commission, as well as the Anti-Task Force on Anti-Christian Bias, which includes anti-Semitism. From a whole-of-government perspective, and the president has already mentioned how he hates these kinds of acts that have been going on, can these entities and these agencies work together with the president to put out a proactive campaign to help people stop the hate?
I think the president himself has been leading on this, Kelly, and has been incredibly clear in his rhetoric that he is not going to tolerate such hate or behavior in the United States of America. And you will see that rhetoric being followed up by action from the Department of Justice, who is seeking to prosecute these cases to the fullest extent of the law. And I know the Attorney General and the FBI Director were very quick to call this what it was, targeted terrorism. And there was some, I think, criticism from the media and at least pundits I saw on television saying, are they too quick to jump here? No. They see the facts and they reveal those to the American people, and they're transparent. And I think, frankly, that's a breath of fresh air from what we experienced in the previous administration.
Are there programs that they can put in place to campaign against this kind of violence, to actually take the whole approach and say, we want to get ahead of you. If you're thinking it, don't do it. And if you're going to do it, sit down and talk to someone within the Faith Office, within the Religious Liberty Commission, as well as the task force.
Yeah, surely. It's a good idea, and I'll pass it along to them. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. When you look at these last-minute Biden pardons, the big ones, Biden siblings, Fauci, January 6th committee.
That's right.
Most of the big ones have the same very neat signature. We would expect that probably to be the auto pen. There is one that looks different. It looks authentic. In fact, if you look at the last name, it almost looks like the president was having a hard time spelling his last name there. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
It's very interesting. Very interesting props. If you want to bring them to my office later so I can take a closer look, I would like to do that. The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the auto pen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years? Perhaps those documents were signed with the auto pen, something that this, I believe the Department of Justice is looking into. As you saw, Ed Martin made an announcement at the Department of Justice this morning to launch an investigation because the American people deserve answers.
Is there any concern that this president, who won the election on a promise to fix the economy and close the border, that focusing and scrutinizing these Biden pardons is looking into the past instead of looking forward?
I think in comparison to the amount of time this president has spent on securing the border, on fixing our economy, I just read out for you an entire list of economic accomplishments. Look at the border numbers. Look at the time and effort he's divulged into solving the global conflicts abroad. It pales in comparison, but it still, nevertheless, is a very important issue. And it was a huge issue that sent the president back to this White House. The Americans saw with their own eyes a mentally incompetent president, and they want answers for that. that, and the president believes they should have
And
them.
something that just
Go
crossed
ahead.
Caroline, how mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it. Cameron.
Thank you. The National Security Council was reorganized, or some staffing changes were made the Friday before Memorial Day. I'm hoping you can explain sort of the new structure, what the structure is of the National Security Council, what the goal is in terms of staffing levels. What is the new National Security Council mode?
Well, as with everything in this White House, it is a top-down approach. The president is here. He is president. He's not an auto pen like the previous president was. He's very much involved in literally every policy discussion and decision that takes place. And we felt it was best to reorganize the National Security Council to respond to that top-down approach that we have here in this White House, and to streamline the efficiency and the effectiveness of the National Security Council. And I would add that Secretary of State Rubio and now National Security Advisor Rubio is doing a tremendous job at leading the National Security Council. He knows the president. He understands where the president is on these issues. He's great to work with here at the White House. I can tell you that. I appreciate seeing him a lot more in the building. And he and the president and the entire National Security Council, who's made up of great patriots who love this country, are doing a tremendous job on the many conflicts around the world that this administration inherited.
Is there a goal staffing level?
I'm sorry?
Is there a goal for the staffing level, like the number of people who would be in this National Security
Look, we
Council?
just want the National Security Council to be as efficient as possible, and if staffing needs are necessary, I'm sure Secretary Rubio would not mind hiring people if necessary, but again, we've been working with them day in and day out, and they're chugging along and doing great work. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions, if I can. President Trump got involved himself in presidential election in Poland by supporting a conservative candidate who ultimately won.
Yeah.
What does it mean for the future U.S.-Polish relations? What's likely to change?
Well, I believe the president is obviously pleased to see the result of the Polish elections. He met with Karol Nawrocki, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yes, Nawrocki. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your insight on that. He met with him at the White House, and he told him, you're going to win because you support common sense. And he supported strong borders in Poland. He supported an end to the woke, radical DEI stuff that we've seen not just here in the United States, but really take over Europe and, frankly, the whole world. He was very outspoken about that. And I was reading the reports about how the Polish people felt about this man, and they felt like he was putting the needs of Poland first. And that's a very refreshing feeling, one that we know very well here in the United States of America. So, as you know, the United States and Poland have always had a very deep and strong relationship, friendship. They're a great ally, and I know the president continues to look forward to working with them.
We have one more on Ukrainian drone attack on Russia. Was President Trump informed in advance by Ukraine that the attack is coming?
He was not. Carrie.
Caroline, so I just want to go back to the issue on the anti-Christian bias as well as issues on anti-Semitic issues. Senator Grassley just put out a report saying that the FBI files have shown that the Catholic group targeting was way more prevalent within the FBI during the Biden era than was previously shown, as far as former FBI Director Christopher Wray was putting out there during congressional testimony. Can you discuss here what President Trump would like to see in terms of consequences within the FBI as far as those who were involved? Also, the second question, if the DOJ finds that the auto pen was used by President Biden, should those actions that were used with the auto pen, should they be null and void?
I'm not going to get ahead of the Department of Justice's investigation into the usage of the auto pen. And again, the question is not, was the auto pen used? It's whether or not the President of the United States knew it was being used, and if not, who was using it in his name, which is clearly illegal behavior. Deanna.
Thanks, Caroline. One on foreign policy, one domestic, if I can.
Sure.
On foreign, just speaking to the president's Truth Social post about Iran recently, saying that there will be no uranium enrichment. Is he saying that that's a red line for him or no?
I already answered this question. The president's been very clear about where he stands on that.
Okay, and then on domestic, there's a report that Laura Loomer met with the vice president today. Can you speak to her relationship with the administration and if she's informally advising in any way?
She is not. I do know she met with the vice president. As for what was discussed in that meeting, I would defer you to his team.
Thanks, Caroline. I have one question on anti-Semitism, one question on China. So for years, radical leftists and Islamists have been calling for so-called globalize the Intifada. Do you believe this is a call for violence against Jews? And do you think these attacks on Jews around our country is what globalizing the Intifada looks like?
I don't want to speak to the merits of those claims without looking into them, but as I said, any violence against Jewish Americans will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Absolutely. And also, Secretary of State Rubio made an announcement saying he'll be revoking visas of certain Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party. Does that include sons and daughters of politicians, presidents, and chairmen?
Again, Secretary of State Rubio has the right to revoke visas, and he made the announcement that the State Department will begin to aggressively revoke those visas of Chinese students who are in our country, namely those with Chinese Communist Party ties, or those who could be a threat to our national security and the interests of the United States. To both of you, go ahead and then back to you.
Thank you. There are now reports that Israeli forces are firing on Palestinians trying to get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Up to 20 people, according to the Red Cross, have arrived to the hospital that they've set up with gunshot wounds, have died from them. Is this administration aware of these? And I mean, what is being done to address this situation?
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them because, unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak. Unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh. Okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front.
Can you talk about the change in the leadership of the organization? What does that mean going forward, and why so early on is this happening?
What organization?
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
Well, look, this was a creative idea that the president called for to get aid into the region. These people were desperate and starving, and the president didn't like seeing imagery of that, and he wanted to ensure that aid was brought in with the approval of Israel for understandable reasons. We will never forget the brutal attack on October 7th. And again, this is something that the previous administration was unwilling to put the time and effort into doing. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. I want to bring it back to the way you began your briefing, talking about the president's mass deportation program and his priorities. 40% of crop farm workers in the U.S. are undocumented, and that's according to the Agriculture Department. Do they have a carve-out in terms of the president's mass deportation program?
The president and the Trump administration have been very clear. If you are in the country illegally, you are subject to deportation.
Is there any concern that, given that large number, if that number is correct, 40% of crop farm workers being undocumented, that could impact the food supply here in America if those individuals that obviously help pick crops all across the country are deported en masse?
Again, this administration is focused on deporting individuals who are in our country illegally. It's something we have to do. We cannot allow the previous administration's invasion of our country of illegal immigrants to continue. We just can't have it. And this is a law and order president. As for our farmers and their concerns, they have a president who has their backs and listens to their concerns and hears them. But we also have a legal pathway to come to this country and work specifically for agricultural work. So there's a legal way to do it, and we encourage that legal pathway, and we're currently working on strengthening our legal immigration system for that reason. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. I just wanted to follow up on your statement last week regarding the Maha report. Sure. You said that there was, I understand there were some formatting issues with the Maha report that are being addressed, and that report will be updated. We also understand that since that, there have been some citations that came about. There's citations of studies that either did not exist or did not back up the report's conclusions. So when you were referring to formatting errors, is that what you were talking about, or was it, could you just explain that?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. There were formatting errors, and those errors were updated by the proper policy components here at the White House, and a new report was issued. So exactly what I said took place. Sure, go ahead, Alec.
Yeah,
good to see you.
Good to see you. Congresswoman Mary Miller suggested that changing Pride Month to Family Month. I would personally like to see maybe a Nuclear Family Month. Some people are saying, let's get a Veterans Month. Does the president have any plans on making a proclamation, or is it just going to be June this year?
Well, there are no plans for a proclamation for the month of June, but I can tell you this president is very proud to be a president for all Americans, regardless of race, religion, or creed.
Caroline.
Reagan, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline.
And then I'll go to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Colorado passed sanctuary protections for illegals 1 month before the terrorist attack this weekend. 2 questions. Why did the DHS remove the sanctuary cities list that it had published, which was ordered by the president? And then what is the administration going to do to further crack down on sanctuary jurisdictions to prevent attacks like what happened in Colorado?
Sure. The Department of Homeland Security will be issuing a new list of sanctuary cities, an accurate list of sanctuary cities. As for what we're doing to crack down, the president has signed various executive orders and has directed the Attorney General to prosecute federal, state and local officials who are not complying with federal immigration authorities and, most importantly, federal immigration law.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you, Caroline.
Caroline.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
So, does the president take calls from foreign leaders on the tariffs on steel and aluminum? Does he still intend to double them tomorrow morning?
The president will be signing that executive order today, and steel and aluminum tariffs will be going to 50%, yes.
No way it's going to change, or it's going to be suspended?
He made that announcement in Pennsylvania, and he plans to deliver on that promise to Pennsylvanians.
And why is he hiking that?
And Ed, go ahead. Yes. I can answer that, but go ahead, Ed.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Caroline. So a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson today said that the U.S. imposed harmful measures like new chip controls and pledging to revoke Chinese student visas. So are the Chinese the victims in this trade back and forth?
Look, I don't think anyone is the victim. These are 2 strong countries, and as I said, the president has a good relationship with China's president and leader, and that discussion will take place later this week.
And what other authorities is the president looking at for tariffs should the decision in the appeals court not go his direction?
Well, right now, his tariffs remain in effect. We spoke at length in my briefing last week about that decision that came down from the International Trade Court, which has been put on pause because the president absolutely does have the authority to implement tariffs and to declare a national emergency for our crippling trade deficit. He could always have the power to use Section 202 or Section 301 as well to impose tariffs if he deems necessary, especially Section 202 tariffs, which are sectoral, as you know, to protect our critical supply chains here at home.
Thanks, Caroline.
You're welcome.
You've got U.S. business leaders begging for certainty. So why did the president suddenly decide to hike tariffs on steel and aluminum again?
You also have U.S. business leaders begging to meet with this president and begging to come to the White House to talk to him because they know that he is a negotiator in chief, that he's making good deals on behalf of the American worker and the steel worker, in particular when it comes to the steel and aluminum tariffs, which he discussed in his speech at length at Pennsylvania and the need for them. And I would just add, I was at that speech on Friday with the president, and there were 2,000 steel workers and their families in the room, many of them wearing their hard hats. I spoke to one backstage who said this is the greatest thing that has happened for that community in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 60 years, because this is a president who doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk too, and he's delivering on his promises to bolster our steel and aluminum industries in this country and to protect those jobs. If not for this president, that steel plant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania would have closed. Those jobs would have been lost, and the president saved that company, he saved those jobs, and he's saving that community, and that's the intention of the steel tariffs, which he will sign later this afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Friday for Steve, everything?
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt standing tall for the American people once again. Great to see that live press briefing from the White House. Thanks so much for watching right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We have some more coverage coming up starting at 2:30. I'll let you know about that in just a hot second, but let's talk about a few of our great sponsors. We'd like to thank the following sponsors for being sponsor here at Right Side. Of course, allfamilypharmacy.com. Use that RSBN 20 code. Next up, we'd like to thank Colonial Metals Group, freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Also, Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Also, Angel Paste out of Spring, Texas. Go to angelpaste.com and use the RSBN promo code there. Let's go to our next sponsor as well, mypillow.com/RSBN. Of course, 50% off for the beach sale. A lot of great sponsors right there on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Okay, so coming up at 2:30, the Senate Judiciary Joint Subcommittee is going to have a hearing to examine the judges versus Trump in the sense of those activist judges. Senator Ted Cruz is going to be a part of this subcommittee hearing, so there may be some fireworks. We'll see. That starts in about 36 minutes from now. For all of us at Right Side Broadcasting Network, I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks again for streaming in. We'll see you again soon.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interviewed the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
You've heard how hard it can be to get access to medications like ivermectin, all the things they don't want you to take because they're actually effective and they don't cost all that much, right? You've seen that one before. So it's critical to have something like that on hand for any emergency and to be prepared in a time of crisis. And that's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're cutting through the nonsense and they make it easy to get hard to find medications when you need them most. They'll provide the prescription, no hoops to jump through, no waiting room, no hassle, and they deliver it right to your door. All Family Pharma even lets you order in bulk so you can stay ahead of the curve. Head over to allfamilypharmacy.com for 10% off your first order. Again, allfamilypharmacy.com. It's simple. Get the 10% savings. Be prepared.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.